special meeting of the Longmont Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Judson Height, the chairman of today's festivities. Our first order of business is roll call. Executive Recording Secretary Jay Madrid, if you'll call us out.
Chair Height.
Is present.
Commissioner Lang.
Here.
Commissioner Wang.
Here.
Vice Chair Poland.
Here.
Commissioner Arment.
Here.
Commissioner Earl.
Here.
Commissioner Jordan.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is a land acknowledgement. The city of Longmont has a land acknowledgement, and it reads as such. We acknowledge that the city of Longmont sits on the traditional territories of the nations of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and other indigenous peoples. We endeavor to honor the history and the living and spiritual connection of these first peoples with this land. We commit to face the injustices that happened when these lands were taken, and to educate our communities, ourselves, and our children to ensure that such injustices never happen again. Next, communications, initial communications, anything from commissioners, from Planning Director Penland.
Just to say thanks for being here and happy December.
Thank you all for being here. Next item is public invited to be heard on items not on our agenda this evening. Shaquille Dalal has identified that he has a matter that's tangentially related but not directly related. So, sir, the floor is yours.
That's correct. Shaquille Dalal, 219 Francis Street. I am going to mention the development that is being reviewed tonight, but it is tangential. I'm here to talk about the process. So my understanding is that the reason that we are here tonight is because the color of the sign that was posted in front of the development was incorrect 1 month ago. And so I have a question about whether or not that process, right, the process and the rules through which it was determined that this review should be delayed by a month, conveyed a public benefit. And is that public benefit worth it for the color of the sign being wrong, for people believing that they may have not understood what the purpose of this meeting was? I understand that public benefit can be sometimes hard to measure, and sometimes it is important for us to notify the public, to ensure that people have a right to know and have that right to know fulfilled. But when it comes to technicalities like this, I think it is also worth us asking what the costs imposed by our rules are. The city of Longmont, housing is very expensive. I think we all know this. And one of the solutions to that problem is to add supply to our community. It is a community goal to ensure that Longmont stays affordable for average people, and City Council has articulated this goal. For the sake of argument, in 2024, the developer attempted to sell the property for $5.7 million. Didn't sell it. I don't know why. None of my business. So let's say that he has a construction loan for $6 million at a 10% annualized rate, which I'm told is a reasonable rate for this sort of thing. And there are going to be 60 units that are eventually built in this development. This 1 month of delay for, again, what I understand to be the color of a sign is going to increase the cost of every single home in this community by $1,000. So my question to you is that public harm worth this delay? We have cost the families that are eventually going to move into our community additional money for what benefit? What benefit will they incur for that extra $1,000, except for the fact that the developer took an extra month to go through this process? And so I'm going to repeat my request from last month when I objected to the removal of this item from the agenda to say that I would like to ask Planning and Zoning to pass a resolution asking council to review the ways that our development process impacts the cost of housing in our community and what should change in the development review process in order to advance our goals of remaining an affordable community for all Longmonters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dalal. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our... Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak on matters not related to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will close the public invited to be heard and move on to approval of the minutes of the November 19th, 2025 regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I will move to approve and ask for a second.
Second.
I'm going to recognize seat 4, which is Vice Chair Poland.
I'll second it.
Fantastic. I'll ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Lang.
Aye.
Commissioner Wayne? Vice Chair Poland?
Yes.
Chair Height?
Aye.
Commissioner Arment?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Abstain.
Commissioner Jordan?
Abstain.
Chair, that passes 5 approvals, 2 abstentions.
It's enough. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the public hearing aspect of tonight's special meeting, which is why most of us, if not all of us, are here. The 1313 Spruce or Bond Farm preliminary plat approval with 4 administrative modifications regarding minimum lot width, residential transparency requirements, front and side yard setbacks, and landscaper buffers. Principal Planner Nathan Jones is not presenting tonight. I'm sorry. Principal Planner Jones is not presenting tonight, but instead, ladies and gentlemen, we have Don Burchett, our planning manager. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody tonight. Nathan is watching tonight, and he is available for us in case we need to chat him up, but for some health reasons, he's not here tonight. So we'll just leave it at that. To begin with, the project that you're going to look at tonight is the 1313 Spruce Avenue project, also known as Bond Farm over the years. This is a preliminary plat that you're looking at, as the chairman just described, along with 4 administrative modifications. The project itself is located south and east of the original town of Longmont. It is bounded on the north. Ooh, it's time for me to sit down already. All right. Yeah, I'll see you guys later. It's short and sweet.
Ouch.
All right. It's bounded on the north. On this aerial that's up on the screen, we have the star representing the center of the property approximately. We have Spruce Avenue to the north. We have Francis to the west. We have Grant Street to the east. And then we have the Isaac Walton Park, which is just down here at the bottom of the aerial, and First Avenue to the south, along with an older neighborhood that's between First Avenue and the property that we're talking about. Comprehensive plan for the city of Longmont identifies this land use of this property as medium density residential, and is residential mixed neighborhood is the specific designation, but it is meant to be a transition type of land use between usually single family and other more intensive land uses, sometimes multifamily, other times other types of commercial or industrial uses, as we have to the south down by the Isaac Walton Park. The zoning for the property is compliant with the envisioned Longmont land use designation. The zoning of the property itself is residential mixed use or residential mixed neighborhood. And again, as you can see, the property itself is starred on this slide. Give a little background. This project has gone through quite a few changes over the years in its vision and the layout for the proposed development. Some of you actually on here may have actually been a part of almost all of it. And for those of you who haven't been here that long, like myself, who's been here longer, it was originally annexed in 2005. The zoning for the property at that time, it was a residential mixed density. It allowed up to 8 units to the acre. The concept plan that was approved and modified and rezoned back in 2016 was for PUD zoning, which allowed for a co-housing project, which is the concept plan that you have on the screen right now. It proposed some single family as well as mixed use buildings and some commercial on the property, trying to provide a mix of uses within this piece of property. In 2018, as part of the Land Development Code revisions, and after Envision Longmont was updated, this property was rezoned to residential mixed neighborhood. And then in 2020, there was a proposal to change the location of the trail that is meant to go to the south to provide connections from the historic east side or west side neighborhood down to First Avenue, and the trail that gets ultimately down towards Isaac Walton and other areas of the city, providing that connection. And then in 2023, many of you will remember that this came in for a concept plan amendment to change the layout of the development from what's on the screen of the co-housing project to the current approved plan, which is on the screen on the right. This was a proposal that would allow up to 70 dwelling units with this concept plan. It tried to provide transition areas on the north and the east side. That's the white bubble, transitioning from the existing single-family homes that are in the existing neighborhoods to the north and to the east, and then transitioning to a little bit more dense product in the middle of the property. The location of the future city park was shown to be moved over onto the west side of the property. That's the dark green on the north half of the property on the west side on the left. And then to the south, we had the proposed pocket park and drainage facilities for the property. As part of the concept plan, the applicant submitted some massing and architectural studies for the commission and the city council to consider during the approval of that concept plan. These are some of the drawings that were included that showed the duplex type of units as well as the townhome products that were envisioned in there. These are just a couple of the examples, not meant to be all of them. The couple key points that we wanted to point out is that as a part of the concept plan amendment, there was a lot of community engagement above and beyond what was required. I don't know that, depending on where you may stand in the neighborhood, you may feel that it was enough. Others may not feel it wasn't enough. It may not be exactly what you were hoping for. It might be all that you wanted. I think you'll hear potentially a wide view as to what the concept plan did. But again, the main thing was that there was community engagement trying to find a way to modify the existing concept plan and create a new concept plan that could achieve the goals of the developer as well as protect the existing residential community that surrounds this property. On the screen is the the preliminary plat that you're going to be considering tonight. These are one of the items that you're going to be asked to determine whether or not to approve or conditionally approve or deny the project. The density proposed is 61 units, so below what was on the concept plan. Still zoned as the residential mixed neighborhood, and is proposing a single-family attached, kind of a duplex-style home, as well as the townhomes that were discussed and shown in those vision documents for the concept plan amendment. I'll walk you around just a little bit of blow up because that drawing was a little hard to see. This is the northwest corner of the property. This is the location for the city park. This area will be dedicated to the city of Longmont for a neighborhood park that will be ultimately developed by the city. And the proposed size currently meets the obligations as spelled out in the annexation agreement for size. To the south, now we go to the south half. You can see off to the left here, there is a proposed pocket park area. Then you also have some of the detention drainage areas as well as community garden space down in the bottom southeast portion of the property. These units down here are townhomes, and then these are a duplex as well as then a fourplex, so a combination of the items that were shown in the concept plan. The proposed street layout, the city worked with the applicant through a number of different revisions to try to come up to something that would meet our standards as well as provide the required access points for fire and emergency vehicles, as well as allowing for the city to be able to service this area with trash and other utilities. So we have a street that comes in and curves back and forth towards Spruce, and then we also have another publicly dedicated right-of-way that does another smaller U that goes down into the lower portion of the property, providing access with two ways in. Also, as you may remember, the property to the west, we recently annexed about 2 years ago. That was the 150 Francis property that some of you were on the commission for. And so what we worked with the applicant on is providing a right-of-way stub over to the property line of the 150, because ultimately we know that we're going to need some kind of a additional connection over to Francis to allow for additional ways in for fire as this neighborhood continues to finish building out. So that's part of the transportation, street layout, and lot layout that we have. From a parking standpoint, the development code, because of the type of units, they each have 2 parking spaces and garages shown on the plans. The red arrows indicate additional areas where parking is being provided within the street rights of way. Anticipated parking up on the north end of the park, pull-off area between the 2 entrances here into the development. This area would be allowed to accommodate additional parking in the street. And then we have additional spaces down here towards the bottom to try to provide some options for people that are visiting this development to be able to park. The drainage, again, it's in the southern end of the property. As you know, the property slopes from the north to the south. It's on the side of a hill there. So that's the normal way that we would try to collect that drainage and get that going. These are color renderings from the architecture that's proposed within the preliminary plat documents and items that you had included in your packet tonight. You can see these little snippets are the garage sides. They're not the fronts as I would normally show you, but I just wanted you to kind of understand. On the right, we have 2 different styles of duplexes with tuck under parking underneath a portion of the second story. And then when you're looking at the multifamily, whether it be a fourplex style or the larger buildings, again, these take access off of those internal streets, so the garages are within the development and the fronts are facing towards the existing developed areas to the east, to the north, and to the 150 Francis property to the west. Again, trying to present a what I would consider a more attractive look towards the adjacent neighbors than just garage doors, keeping those internal to the project. Tonight, as a part of the application, you have 4 administrative modifications, and I know that you've dealt with these a few times, but just for everyone's understanding of how this will work tonight, per the Land Development Code, the planning director has the ability to approve modifications to standards at a staff level. But when we have those associated with major development applications and believe that they're an integral part of the way the project is being developed, we would ask the commission, and the code allows for us to send these to you for consideration. And so tonight you are going to be the decision-making body for 4 administrative modifications. It's also important to point out that under the administrative modification section, you are allowed in the city to request a 25% reduction of a numerical standard, and that's our typical. But there is an exception within the Land Development Code for infill development. Infill development, the definition is provided right here on the slide. The staff has made the determination that this property meets that definition of infill development. For infill development, the standards actually can be deviated greater than 25%. So there is really no limit on the percentage of a modification that can be granted for an infill project such as this. So in some of the examples, you're going to see the request is less than 25%. But in other cases, it's going to be more than 25% of the standard. So we just wanted to point that out. Really quick, because my time's going long here, we'll go through those just briefly. I'll let the applicant provide their explanation and justification. I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the requests. We have 4 lots that are starred on the screen right now. The request is to reduce the lot width of those from the minimum 20 foot. The second administrative modification is the transparency requirement. The areas that front streets are required to meet a certain transparency and requirement for the amount of glass that is on the front of these. Because the backs in this case are facing onto the streets within the development, it would require a modification to that standard, as the numbers don't meet the minimum standard. We also then have administrative modification for setbacks. It's a little tough to see on this screen, but there are some red lines that have been drawn along the lots in the locations of where the setbacks are asking to be modified from the standard for this development. And then the fourth modification is a reduction of the B buffer that's required between the city park to be developed and the lots that are along the east side of the proposed park. There is a common outlot that'll be owned by the HOA between the two, and code requires that that buffer be 20 feet. And the applicant has asked for a reduction of that. And again, I'll let them explain their thinking for why they need those. I'm not going to go through the review criteria only. This is just as a friendly reminder. The decisions tonight, you're looking at requests for modifications to our standards, but then we also have to make findings related to the review criteria for the type of application. So we have the general criteria that apply to the application. We then have specific review criteria that apply to the preliminary plat. And then we have the review criteria for the modifications that are being requested. So each modification would need to meet the standards outlined on this slide in order to be approved. As Nathan noted in his staff report, as well as in the recommendation, staff was recommending approval of those. So public notice and outreach, there was original neighborhood meeting notice that went out in April of 2024. Then we did notice of application when the application came in October of 24. And then we did another notice before the one for tonight for tonight's meeting. But again, as discussed earlier under public comment, there was a flaw in that did not meet our standards. So we had asked the commission to allow us to have this meeting tonight, and graciously accepted that, and we appreciate that. But we did complete the notice for tonight's meeting. And just finally, so tonight the Planning Commission is the decision-making body. You're being asked to review 5 items tonight and make decisions on those items. The first is the preliminary plat. The second is the administrative modifications, which consist of the lot width reduction, the reduction in the transparency standards, the front yard setback and side yard setback reduction, as well as the type B buffer. The Planning and Zoning Commission has the following options, with multiple requests, you probably could come up with any number, but I'm going to go through the general ones that you have. First would be to approve the application. Second would be to approve it with conditions. And the third would be to deny. You do have options related to the administrative modifications if you wanted to try to break any of those apart. Again, as staff recommends, we recommend approval, and that's in the PZR 2025-14A. And hopefully I did Nathan a good enough service on his presentation. So with that, I am available for questions. We can either do that now, or if you'd like to wait until after the applicant's presentation, I'm happy to come back.
Why don't we wait for a minute? I do have one quick question for Assistant City Attorney Terrell, which is the notice issue. Should we address that right now? Do we need to address it at all?
Good evening, Chair Height, members of the Commission. Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney. I don't think we've had any questions concerning notice at this point for this hearing, so I don't see a reason to address it unless it happens. So,
Thank you very much. Mr. Burchett, thank you very much. I'll ask the applicant if it has a presentation it would like to present at this time.
Is there a way to make it, how do you make it bigger, do you know? I don't see how to make it full screen. There's got to be a F11. All right, let's give it a shot. Control L.
there you go.
Oh, look at that.
I don't know what I did.
Yeah, that worked.
Look at that. Perfect.
Testing? Oh, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Gore. I'm one of the co-owners of the local architecture firm F9 Productions. We're the architects of this project. We've done a bunch of work in Longmont, commercial and residential. And one thing that I think is pertinent to this is when we try to know our potential clients, one of the things we ask is, why are you doing this project? And a lot of our residential clients, whether it's an addition or a new home, says, I need to be here, or I want to be here for family, to move next to my grandparents, to move next to my brother, for my kids to grow up where I grow up. And I think that that's what we're trying to provide here. A little bit of a brief history. As you know, this project has gone on for a long time. And the first time when we had a big meeting with planning and zoning, they asked us to go back to the community. And we did. And we worked with them. I can remember we had a meeting downtown. We had a meeting at a hotel. We had a 2-day meeting at Walter Isaac Park. And one of the concepts we came up with was this concept that you might have seen before. And this is, I'm pretty sure, a drawing from one of the community members. And one of the key points of this was we had a vertical orientation now, which we didn't before. We used to have a horizontal. We connected the community, and then we activated what we were calling the alleyways. And then we also cemented where the park should be and where the drainage should be for obvious reasons. We then came back to planning and zoning and presented this concept plan. And it took that into account, and it also added on top that buffer zone on those two areas. And it was really a height concern and limiting them to 2 stories and to duplexes at the most. There was conversation in that meeting to do that to the other 2 sides, but the Planning and Zoning Commission decided that that might be too restrictive and didn't require that to happen. Their main concern was to see if we could execute on that concept based on this concept plan, but on what the community and us work so hard over all those meetings to actually do. And this is what we came up with. And I think we did hit that, and we did do what the community needed and also balance that with what the development needed. So you can see we have that vertical orientation. We have a lot of connection throughout it. We have plantings in the alleyways, and we broke those up. We have the park. And our main task then after that was working with the city to see how we could make this work with the codes. And everyone who's dealt with codes know that codes aren't perfect. So I actually credit the city for coming up with a lot of solutions to make it match what I can only call more normal now. Here's just a picture of the architecture that's been developed. They showed it. This is actually from the lower right-hand corner of the plan looking up, but you can see it's a modern craftsman sort of look. And this isn't the subject to it, but it's something where we're trying to we're trying to fit in with the neighborhood. So going with what we're asking you to approve, we had to find solutions that work to make our concept plan work. So one of the things that the city had us do was we had to change from our alleys to roads, and that made the width requirements, the buffers, and the streets and the sidewalks larger. And I'm sure that you will hear negative comments about this project, and I'm sure you'll hear positive comments about this project. And when we got that requirement, one of the requests was we want affordable solutions to this. So instead of just losing units and then spreading that across more units, we kept the units and we made the units smaller so that they're 1-car garage, they're lower square foot, and there'll be a lower cost. And that's what we did with those 4 units that are highlighted there, and that's reducing from the 20-foot to a 16-foot. The other thing that, because of the technicality of the code, because now they are streets rather than alley, you have to have transparency requirements. We aren't skirting this issue. On what everyone would typically think the front of the building is, where your sidewalks are and your entrance are, we're keeping those transparency requirements, we're hitting all those. In the back, instead of meeting those transparency requirements, which would then make us put more windows in the garage, it became a safety concern, seeing what was in garages, and it became a privacy concern. So we're asking for a slight reduction down to 19%, just because with the garages and with the windows, to be able to give some of that transparency, but without jeopardizing people's safety or privacy, and while also keeping it on the other side, the front sides of the buildings. And all these garages are facing inward of the project, not facing outward to the neighborhood. The next one we tried to fight the city a little bit, but they said a reasonable solution, so we said yes to it. They wanted these sidewalks highlighted as an outlot. And the reason why they wanted it as an outlot, so it would be very clear who would shovel those and that there would be no problem there about who was responsible for it. One of our counterpoints was, this is already covered by city ordinance, you have to shovel sidewalks. And another one is the HOA is going to want to do it for liability reasons. And once you make those outlots, all of a sudden you push the setbacks to where those outlots are, and then all of a sudden you destroy more unit count. And what they said is, well, why don't we just count the setbacks from the center of the sidewalks where the property lines would be in a normal situation, and keep the concept going that meets the community needs. And we thought that was a great idea. So that's that one. The next one was, again, because these are roads, not alleyways. If you've been to any townhome development, most of these townhomes abut the alley or the street, but because it's a street, we need a setback. So we're asking for the front setback to be 7.5 feet instead of 10 feet to stay within that 25% while keeping our landscape buffer. Then, between the last time we talked to planning and zoning and now, you heard the development of a new street that came into an existence that was never in the old Bond Farm or this Bond Farm. Connect for Fire and Connect for Community and to make sure the neighborhoods are connected, which was a real big issue because we have a hard concept plan agreement at its 0.85 acres. And one of the initial discussions was, well, what if we split the landscape buffer? And this came from the city, meaning we'll have half on our side, half on your side. And that went on for a while. We landed up on reducing the landscape buffer to 9 feet on our side, just because the city can't commit, they don't have funds for it, they don't know what they're going to build. And in the community discussions, it came up, and it is a great point. Once that park does have funding and money, people can put their input of what they want there, and all that. Another point why I don't think that this buffer, it's not taken away from the city park. And also, we placed our park just below where it says new street. And right as of now, as of I know it, that new street won't be made until that new neighborhood is needed of it. It will be clear in case fire needs it for any reason, but it won't be made. So it will be a large continuous park from the undeveloped city park to our developed park for the time being. Here is a section of that. And here is a blown up view of that. So you can see the fence line right by the tree is to the left, it's the city side. And then we have our 9-foot landscape buffer, and then we have our setback. I am the only one in the city, maybe I can't speak for the community, but for the developer who has constantly advocated for. My professional opinion is that I think the houses should be closer. I think that the park should be engaged by people watching over it. Personally as well, I have kids. I live right next to a park, and my wife is always asking me where the kids are. And I said, hey, I don't know, and it doesn't matter. And she never lets that slide, so I always have to go out and find my kids. I am losing this argument that people want to push it back, where I want to push those porches and those balconies closer, but that is up for you to decide, so I'll let you guys make the hard decision there. We showed some sections and some images, and I want to show you that we've developed and executed on those. We've worked through grading, we've worked through all the utilities, we've worked through the traffic and how that works, we've worked through landscaping, and these are real hard plans that match what we worked with the community. And I want to end with, I know that this plan isn't perfect. You know it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. There will be good people moving in here to be next to their families, to live in Longmont, a place that they love, and I think that you should approve it. With that, I will pass it off to the developer if he wants to say anything, Mark Young.
I just have a few things I want to say. And I want to tell you, first of all, I was kind of counting it up, and I think we have more than 1,000 hours of volunteer time, community input. I mean, it's amazing how much time and effort went into it, and the people that came out of the woodwork who got involved with it on their own time and really devoted themselves to the project. And I can honestly say that today, I think we have a better project as a result of the community engagement we've had than we would have had otherwise. I'm not going to say it's more financially successful because of the time it's taken, but I think that overall we serve the community better this way than we would have if we'd just been allowed to go off and do it on our own pace and our own way to do that. A couple things that Alex talked about that I want to help you understand a little bit better was the some of the reasons for these modifications. First of all, the 5-foot setback, the setback on those sidewalks. Just a moment. Hey, could you put up that screen that had the 4 modifications? Do you remember which one that was?
Is it the drawing one, that one?
No, it had the
Or all 4 of them listed?
all 4 listed. Yeah, that'll just help me. There it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Probably won't be able to read it, but we'll do the best we can. So the lot width reduction, why is that important? Well, so we really took it upon ourselves to try to produce affordable by design product, workforce product, not build $30 or $40 million house out here, but build a whole bunch of townhomes, which is what we thought the community wanted. That was our impression. So I think you guys can relate to this. If, we've got $3 million in the land, we think the infrastructure is going to be $3 million. So it's $6 million sunk cost right there. And if I have 70 units, it's much less expensive per unit. If I've got 65 units, it's less expensive. It's more expensive. If I've got 61 units, it's more expensive. So in order to defray the cost of the infrastructure and not have to impose higher burdens, sale price burdens on the other units, we opted to go with the smaller units. Now, these smaller units wouldn't be a problem if this project had been developed as a condominium project, which is initially what we wanted to do. But after talking to staff, we and the fire department, it became clear that this should be a townhouse project instead. Now that lets me segue into the second thing I wanted to talk about. The road widths, just like the lot widths, and the fact that these are public right-of-ways now. Had this been a condominium project, these would have been private streets. We would have had private streets. But the fire department said, almost right off the bat, Longmont doesn't allow you to address off an alley. We can't address off a private street. So it would have been, 1313 Spruce, Unit A, B, C, D, D1, Unit A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Unit 2, Building A, B, C, E, F, G. So they wanted individual addresses. So in order to do that, we had to convert all these private roads to public streets. So that was a burden that was placed upon us to try to meet a health safety issue. The fire department thought it'd be easier for them to respond to a call. They'd have a better idea of where they were going. So that was an important aspect of that. Then what came about as a result of transitioning the property from a condominium project to a townhouse project, the setback requirements really messy. Let me explain. The city wants all of the buffers, sidewalks, stuff like that in outlots. So when I create an outlot that runs down the middle of my project, when we had the center of the project, we had that sidewalk running right down the middle, that became a lot. So when that became a lot And it's not just not just wide enough for the sidewalk. I had to have a foot on either side for maintenance as well. So I think it's a 6 foot or a 7 foot outlot. Then I had to fit the front yards in. Well, as a condominium project, my front yard would have gone to the middle of the sidewalk. So that's what we did. We picked the middle of the sidewalk as our setback, and we based our setbacks off that. So I want you to understand that these administrative variances are really driven by the fact that the fire department wanted us to address each unit individually. The spirit of how it's done is completely consistent. I don't think we've asked for anything that does not stem from that in one way or another and isn't consistent with what a development like this would look like. The transparency thing is also interesting because since these are public roads, again, and not private alleys, private drives, we have to have transparency. If you guys want us to meet the transparency requirement on the back of these units, we can do it. We just got to put windows in the garage doors. But I don't think that makes sense, and that's why we've asked for that one. Finally, the reduction of the buffer. So there's one other contributing factor to the reduction in the buffer, and that is when Mark Van Warner, I think, annexed his property, 159 Francis, 150 Francis, the city came back to us and said, hey, Mark, we need a connecting road to go between here. Now, what did that do to me? Well, for one thing, I lost 2 units. So the cost of every unit in the place went up by that cost. The second thing that happened was it took away land from the park. So the Parks Department had originally said, look, we'll split it with you. You need to do 30 feet. We'll take 15. You put up 15. We'll be good. But then because of the annexation agreement, we couldn't take parkland to put the road on. So we had to push the road further south. So we were already constrained physically. We have a hard border on the north, a hard border on the west, and now a hard border from this road on the south. The only place we could move is to the east. And when we move to the east, the whole project gets crunched together. So the thought was, the solution, the best possible solution, was that we would reduce that buffer. And just as Alex was saying, the reduction of the buffer could be viewed as a benefit, engaging the park, or it could be seen as a detriment, imposing on people's privacy or people's fun that they could have in the park. But keep in mind, no matter what happens, whether the buffer's 9 feet, 14.5 feet, or 20 feet, the size of the park stays the same. There's a fence that runs along it. It doesn't change. This is really just a question of how do those houses engage with the park. That's what should be forefront in your mind. So that's what I wanted to talk about in a nutshell. But I wanted to say one more thing. I've been continuing to engage with the community. It didn't stop with our charrettes. It didn't stop with our public meetings. But I can tell you that there's people here in the audience who I've worked with for a long time. We've gone back and forth on many things. And some of the people from the community here, I spent hours on the phone today working on some compromises which I hope will win the day. So what I'd like to suggest is I'd like to say 2 things about that. So I have 2 kind of quasi-conditions that if you guys felt it was important, I'd be willing to adopt, that I'd embrace, that I'd say, woohoo, let's go, right? So one of the concerns of the community has always been parking. I know parking's off the table, but just because parking's off the table doesn't mean that we're not concerned about it. And I've built one project in my life that I had a parking reduction on, and I regretted it every minute. Our parking, if we were to be required to adhere to the old code, would have required that we have 140 parking spaces. We have 178 plus 12 on the road. Now, if you look at that, that's a ton of parking for this site. We Googled it, the community and I, and determined that you should have 0.1 or 0.2 guest parking spaces per unit in a townhouse project like this. So when you do the math, we have way more parking than you need. However, being the trying to work with the community and get a consensus, I'm looking for 100% support, guys. We've agreed to look at that little road, that's called Park Place that's the connector between our project and Mark's project to the west, Francis Street. So we would propose to improve that as a gravel road and do a turnaround. I'm going to show you a picture. Alex, show him a picture. So what I'm proposing is we do a turnaround. We create parallel parking spaces on this road, improve it as a gravel road, and have a vehicle turnaround at the end. Now, this came up today at the last minute, so we haven't had a chance to engineer it, but you can see it looks pretty good. So what I'm proposing as a condition to the project is that the applicant shall agree to improve the road that's called Park Place as a gravel road to provide additional parallel parking for the site, conditioned upon the turnaround being approved by whatever governing body needs to address it. If the turnaround cannot be approved, then the project would move forward without this condition, or with this condition being satisfied. But if we can do it, or if we can move the turnaround to that alley, but we're not sure if that's has a vehicle right away or not. If we can do it, I think we can get another 8 or 10 parking spaces on the site, which the community would like to have, and we'd be willing to improve if you guys, approve us. The second thing that's been a concern for the community has been the buffer zone on the park. We've heard from 3 people in the community regarding this buffer zone. I imagine there's probably more who are interested. I imagine there's some who think it'd be better to have the houses closer, like Alex. Some who think it'd be better to have the houses farther away, like the community that we've been working with. Well, we spent some time today trying to come up with a compromise. And so I have another condition that I'd be willing to accept, provided we get approved, and you guys feel it's necessary. And that's that the buffer along the park shall be reduced to 14 foot 6 inches instead of the 9 that we've been suggesting. It'd be reduced to 14 foot 6 inches. However, I have one ask with that. Unenclosed front porches of no more than 3 feet, stairs to the entrances, egress window wells, and the foundation of the homes to be built along the park would be allowed to encroach in the front yard setback. So we can give them more room between the buffer and the homes as a compromise in exchange for us being able to put front porches on there. And the front porches would be in the setbacks, in the front yard setback. By the way, Longmont already allows for front porches to be put into front yard setbacks. However, it's supposed to be 5 foot minimum size, and I think that's too much. So I agreed to limit it to 3 feet. So that's really the ask on this one. So that's it. I mean, you've heard it. I hope that you can support us. I hope that I've given you enough information to think about. I really do think we've done a good job with this, and I'm very proud to say we worked with the community. We've got tons and tons of hours and time into it, and I hope it's for all of our benefits. Thank you. I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, sir. I think we're going to move on to the public hearing aspect of this and then reserve the right to call you back when we deliberate. With that, is there any more of the applicant's presentation, Mr. Young, that you want to present?
Is there any more?
No.
Nope, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, do you have a list? Sorry. This now enters the public hearing phases of this hearing, where the public's invited to come up and speak its concerns. I think there is a sign-up list that Recording Secretary Madrid is going to retrieve, and we'll call up individuals to come speak. We limit you to 5 minutes. Please state your name, give your street address. Certainly, or I can speak louder. So you will have 5 minutes to speak. When you come up, please introduce yourself, state your name and your address. You'll be limited to 5 minutes. My list isn't as long as I thought it was going to be. Top of the list, though, is David Palmer.
Good evening. David Palmer, 1430 Spruce Avenue, block from the proposed development. As you well know, Bond Farm was originally, excuse me, going to be a park, and we as residents couldn't have been happier about that. City had $250,000 set aside for that, which I don't know what happened to that money. And the previous owners wanted it to be a park, but it wasn't to be. Neighbors did not express outrage at this, but instead, over the past several years, formed a neighborhood group of at least 100 residents to work with the city regarding development. A committee met with the developer's team to come to an agreement, and our request was for 42 units or less. But this obviously didn't work out. And I don't know who Mr. Young's been talking to in the community, but it's not public knowledge, because this group now has not heard about this. And let's be clear, the developer does not live in the city, and his goal is one, and that is to make as much money as possible. That's just a fact of life. But I don't believe he really truly cares about the neighborhood because of this. Based on his statements, at one time he said I could build 110 units on this lot if I wanted to. At another time he said nearby houses will be scraped in the future. Scraped? This didn't sit well with neighbors. Also, he said telling city council that they would hear a lot of noise tonight in regard to opposition to this project. The main issues are the impact to the neighborhood and the fact that the streets will not support this development. Spruce and all of the feeder streets from Sunset to Bowen are single lane if cars are parked on either side. So you can imagine with now 120 additional cars, plus the traffic already there, it's going to be a nightmare. School buses, trash truck, I mean, it's not going to work. There are numerous cyclists that ride every day up and down Spruce. There's no cycling lane. They're going to be shut out. They use it to go places and to get to the greenway. And numerous young families are pushing strollers up and down Spruce. They're going to be in danger. If this is to be developed, it should only be 24 to 36 units. Single family, one would hope. With a small amount of duplexes, as in the surrounding area. There is no unit in Bond Farm or Old Town nearby that is 62 units crammed into one spot. Even at these numbers, the streets will be pushed to the max and the congestion bad. Is this development plan a positive for the quality of life in the neighborhood of Bond Farm? No. Is it negative impact on the neighborhood and its residents? Yes. And just because a developer has met the requirements although he's requesting changes again, and how this is zoned. It doesn't mean that this cannot be re-examined as to the impact to the neighborhood and the city. So, how do we repair this trajectory of proposed development? We citizens are depending on you to support us. Are we too far down the line? No. Not if planning and council reevaluate how this would impact an established 150-year-old plus neighborhood. Not if planning and council show courage and say, wait a minute, this isn't the right thing to do to drop this huge development in this old neighborhood. I'm in the fourth quarter of my life, but I'm thinking of young families and their children.
You could wrap up real quick, that'd be good.
One sentence.
Yep.
You, as planning, are our stewards. We are counting on you to show courage and support us. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. John Pillman?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. John Pullman, 1303 Spruce Avenue. My primary concern with Mr. Young's preliminary concept plan was centered on guest parking within the development. To be specific, this relates to parking that any guest, visitor, maintenance worker, etc. would use when visiting these units within the development, separate from the garage and parking pads dedicated to specific units. He's got a fair number of garages, parking pads for the guests that are for the owners of the units. The bottom line, though, is that there were only 3 spaces identified within the development for guest parking that were not assigned, and I thought that was too few. And of course, with parking minimums removed from city code, he didn't really need to even provide those 3 spaces. But during the past couple of weeks, we've had some productive discussions with Mr. Young about adding more guest parking spaces within the development. The benefits are numerous, but having the ability for guests to visit residents within this development and to be able to hopefully find a parking spot within the development without having to go out on the streets that Dave mentioned earlier are rather narrow. And a lot of those homes were built well over 100 years ago. Having some guest parking within the development, I think, is good for the residents and good for the neighborhood. So you may have noted that on Mr. Young's plan that there is a road easement required on the south side of the property to connect his development to Francis Street. Mr. Young has agreed to grade this road, cover it with gravel, I assume. Grade the road, cover with gravel, with the result being that it should provide maybe another 10 parallel parking spots, guest parking spots within the development. This will require the city to agree to a turnaround. He's already mentioned that at the end of the road, something that Mr. Young is more than willing to engage in those discussions and options for a turnaround. Of course, there's no guarantee the city will accept the turnaround option, but I'm remaining optimistic that we'll find a solution to this. And I'm remaining optimistic that we can provide that and provide some much needed guest parking for the residents in there. So given Mr. Young's willingness to accommodate this request, assuming the city will accommodate this request as well, I'm in support of this preliminary concept plan and preliminary plat, and look forward to seeing this continue on to the next phase of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next on my list is Drew Sorrells. Sorrells?
Hello, everybody. I am Drew Sorrells, and I live at 328 Grant Street. And I'm here tonight to just present a little overview of what we've been through over the last few years. Mark first introduced this project in a neighborhood, a group of neighborhood people came together. We're within 1,000 feet of the property, and we were part of that group, and we were originally opposing the project. But we also know how deeply Longmont needs more housing. The people who work here can actually afford. So instead of staying in opposition, we asked a simple question. Is there a better version of this project that could serve the developer and the neighbors and city planning, and ultimately you on the Planning and Zoning Commission? So to explore that, we reached out to an organization, an institute at CSU, the Institute for the Built Environment at Colorado State University. And they're recognized statewide for their thoughtful third-party approach to helping communities shape quality development. Their team guided a series of community workshops, or charrettes, each with a clear purpose. And so my husband and I, Dan, agreed to be the liaison to the developer so that we could form a communication, and it clearly got to a point where we were trying to be a neutral body, and there were neighbors that were still very much against the project, but we wanted to keep communication going, so we sort of split away from the group and helped develop these charrettes. Even though Mark Young had initial concerns about involving the neighborhood, he and his full project team participated in each charrette. City planning, other city departments, planners from Boulder and Denver, and residents from the surrounding area all joined in these working sessions. The first charrette created space for everyone to share concerns, questions, and hopes. CSU also showed examples of successful infill projects from Colorado and elsewhere. The second charrette, which Planning and Zoning requested, centered on compatibility, scale, architecture, landscaping, and how the project would meet the character of the surrounding neighborhoods. And by this third charrette, the ideas and themes were clear. The Institute developed 4 distinct plan options, one that resembled the original concept, and 3 that were completely new, each with different unit counts, home sizes, park configurations, and street layouts. Out of the 4, one of the new designs received overwhelming support from the 26 participants. That is the framework F9 used to create the proposal before you tonight and presented prior. Dan and I live just a couple of blocks from the site. We walk this neighborhood almost every day. We believe this updated plan brings meaningful benefit to Longmont, more attainable in-town homes and a new in-town park, and more opportunities for people who work here and live here and shop here. We encourage you to support this proposal. It reflects genuine community collaboration and very thoughtful design. We've seen it go from something that we originally disagreed with to a very compatible design in the neighborhood, we believe. And it's a very future-focused approach to one of Longmont's most pressing needs. This single, well-designed project can make a positive and lasting contribution to our great community. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And I think your husband, Dan, you're next on the list.
Somebody left their glasses up here. Dan Sorrells, 328 Grant Street. Commissioners, thank you. I'm here to speak in support of the administrative modifications to the preliminary plat for 1313 Spruce Project that are the main and I guess only agenda item for tonight. As you may have heard, this project has greatly evolved since it was initially presented into a well-conceived, community-focused design, one that the City Council and this body blessed when it approved the concept plan. There are a couple of key reasons that has made this evolution possible. First is the moderated design process of the 3 charrettes that Drew was just talking about, that involved community citizens, design professionals, city staff where appropriate, and the developer and his team. This process allowed for concerns to be heard and addressed. The second key reason, the developer and his team listened and changed the design to better fit the neighborhood, while also offering a wider variety of unit types. Their willingness has made the Bond Farm project into what should be a future template for future developments. None of the administrative modifications that are being requested tonight detract from what the City Council approved. In fact, I think they all help maintain the spirit and character of the concept plan. The developer and his team have worked closely with city staff to honor that vision, and as I've learned tonight, they're still working with the community to help honor that vision as well. My only concern is how long this process has taken. As we all know, time is money, and the longer this process takes, the more expensive it becomes, which in terms impacts how attainable and cost attainable these units can be. I urge the Commission to accept the request and to help bring this project to its full manifestation. I would also urge that this Commission to encourage both staff and City Council to find ways to streamline this process to be more transparent, coordinated, and I want to underline coordinated, and efficient. The city's 13,000 unit housing deficit can't be solved when even small infill projects like this take 2 to 3 years before a shovel can be put into the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Hal Morrison is next.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Hal Morrison, 236 Sunset Street. I'm here tonight partially to represent Glenn Bond. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple of years ago. He was back for a high school reunion. He was the one who told me that the Bond Farm, by his dad's say-so, was going to be given to the city as a park. The city would develop it. Unfortunately, due to family infighting, after Bob Bond passed away, Glenn's side lost, and it came into the city with, I think, a total of 14 houses expected. From that, it went into the shared housing, co-housing, which was almost okay, at least it left some of the fields. And then it went to Mark Young, and now we're looking at a dense pack. A dense pack, I might add, in an area that does not have any connections to collector streets or arterials. There's not one single townhome in our neighborhood. Yes, there's a bunch of duplexes, there's a few fourplexes, but we're predominantly single-family houses. This sort of development does not rate as infill. It just doesn't. So if you would honor Bob Bond and say, let's make this single-family homes, I'd appreciate that. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. Charlie Schilling, you're up next.
Hello. Good evening, P&Z Commission. My name is Charlie Schilling, and I live at 224 Francis Street. The Bond Farm neighborhood and the 1313 Spruce development has a long history, if you've been hearing about, of trying to make this development work for everybody. So for those of you that are new, welcome to Bond Farm. So over the past few years, the planning department, that P&Z and the developer and residents worked hard to settle on a direction for this development, as you've heard a lot about. So there's hundreds of residents that are looking at this and are concerned with this development. And many of them rallied in the earlier stages of this development to advocate for a development that struck a good balance between adding houses into a neighborhood that worked for the existing neighbors as well as providing houses for new residents. So most of us support adding housing in a thoughtful way. So if this development must just go through, I want to find some practical solutions here. So that's kind of where I am, is trying to be practical about it. And what I say tonight are my opinions and suggestions. When reviewing the preliminary plat under consideration tonight, it became clear to me that the numerous requested modifications to the city, there are many modifications to the city code, and many of them were referred to you all because there's so many of them. Guess you all know that. I reviewed these modification requests in detail and met with Nathan Jones, Mayor. He's not here tonight, but I want to thank him for helping me interpret these modification requests and the criteria by which these modification requests are being interpreted and ultimately judged. And he suggested come back with some alternate designs. You know, what Joan Peck would always tell me is like, well, come back with some solutions. So my understanding is the P&Z attempts to follow the rules, codes, conditions, and criteria as best they can. But it's clear to me that a lot of these get down to subjectivity. We all like to follow rules, it's easier, but the stuff you're looking at is very subjective. Terms such as practical difficulty, unusual aspect of the site, or meets the purpose and intent of the comp plan, represents a design without detriment to the surrounding properties or neighborhoods or a natural environment. So one person's interpretation of detriment to the surrounding property might be it's not next to a toxic waste site, which I've heard someone from the city say, and while the other person's interpretation could be completely different from that, yet all those opinions and considerations should be considered. It gets down to subjectivity. You, the P&Z, will be the ultimate arbiter of that. I'm just here doing my civic duty. When you talk about subjectivity, please think about, consider the tens of thousands of people that'll be using this park over the years. When reviewing the requested modifications, the one that seemed most to jump out at me was the setback on the park. The proposed park preliminary plat recommends a 9-foot buffer, as you heard, and for the 6 homes that are going in on that section of the town. So the code is 20 feet. I looked around the city and and even contacted our city park manager and couldn't find a precedent for a buffer this narrow. So walking around, the city park manager didn't have a precedent for buffers less than 20 feet. No precedent. I felt with the high need for the park, the tens of thousands of people that will use this park for the next 100 years, I wanted to see about getting the buffer restored to a proper buffer that conforms to the code and works for the tens of thousands of people that will use this park versus the 6 homes and the opinion of, an architect. Several neighbors asked to meet with developer Mark Young, and he graciously met with us several times. And he was very open to hearing our concerns, helped us understand his perspective, and encouraged us to present alternative solutions to our concerns. I have to say, I was impressed with Mark. Thank you, Mark. Good to get to know you a little bit. And while he, didn't just concede all of our requests, but he was open to working together. Mark's plat shows this 9-foot buffer for 6 of his homes, and the park boundary, the code is 20. So we talked about this a lot and came up with a compromise, which he mentioned earlier. I think this is a decent compromise, and I support and endorse this plat with this condition of the park buffer being 14.5 feet between the park and the lot lines of the 6 homes from the park. So thank you, Mark, Nathan, who's not here, and the P&Z Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Next on the list is John Loughran.
Hello, I'm John Loughran. I live at 220 Sherman, just directly above the proposed development. There was some talk about some of the history that's been of this whole procedure, and I just did want to say welcome to the new members, and good to see the familiar faces that were here when we were here before. But regarding some of the charrettes and meetings that we had with the neighbors, I would just like to say that we began, like, a priori with the givens that, like, there's going to be buffers that were required by the city, like the 20-foot buffer from the park. Those were the constraints within which we worked, and we had those assumptions going forward. So I would argue or request that you respect those things which are set in the code. I know you're allowed to do some maneuvering with those, but also at that time when we were meeting, and we invested a lot of time in that, and other people did as well, but we had a lot of discussion about the pads behind each unit and what they would be able to accommodate as far as, like, maybe commercial vehicles. And I mentioned to the previous zoning commission that over near Oscar Blues, there's a lot of new units over there, but they are not allowed to park their commercial vehicles inside there. And I don't know if it's a restriction. It may be a condo. Perhaps they can't fit in the garages. But on the surrounding streets, they're full of commercial vehicles and trailers if you go down there on the weekends. But that is a commercial area. It's not built out with residents. So I am kind of somewhat fearful, given the narrow nature of the streets there. The 30-foot road that's been discussed south of the park would be a positive, even if it's only temporary, just to alleviate some of that off-site parking. But the other streets, like Spruce and Sherman and the adjoining streets, are not 30 feet. So they are below the current standard. And I had a discussion with a gentleman from the engineering office the other day, and he said, well, we can bring some remedies to whatever the traffic and parking situations are when it becomes necessary, when it seems like it's required. But I would argue that if you go to Sunset and Spruce now, it's a problem. So I would like you to see you be proactive in ensuring that it doesn't become a problem. And what I had said to Mr. Ortiz is that we've been waiting for remedies at 3rd and Sherman for 5 years on just basic signage. And we are involved in some court cases with that. And that's been ongoing, and it's been very stressful and painful for the neighborhood. So now we're having that other pressure from below. So again, I would support any parking that could be along that road there at Park Place or Park Road. I would support a full buffers and setbacks as were initially discussed and required in the code. And finally, I would just say, going back to the shred again, the orientation that you see on those buildings right now was a result of that. And I think one of my neighbors, Doug Jones, is an architect trained. So he kind of helped to orient those buildings, which is a more aesthetically pleasing layout. But at that time, we talked about the canyon. So there's some big corridors going down there between those buildings. And I'm not sure, it might be from here to the wall behind you, you know, from one face of one unit to the other. But it seems like they need to have a little more space in there. It looks very lush when it shows the pictures of the big foliage above. But I think if you were looking out your front window, you might want a little more space there between each unit. So thank you for, oh, and the last thing, I would just say that Mr. Young was very explicit in saying that some of the units were going to be smaller. But it's my understanding that a lot of the units are going to be bigger as well. So that's going to push some of those setbacks. And those bigger units will allow a higher price point and more profitability. So it's not all just about saving money and having 4 units that have a smaller width. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Doug Jones, you were just mentioned, and now you're next.
Someone's glasses are up here. Is there any way I can get the landscape plan up? If not, that's okay.
That I can't help you with.
No? Okay, no worries. So Doug Jones, 243 Sherman Street. Want to start out by saying welcome to everybody, and thank you all the new people that are here. It's nice to see you up there. I'm very happy with the progress that this development has made. I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm happy to have met with Mark a number of times and met with other members of the community and met with the city staff to talk about all this stuff. I think it's very important, and I'm very engaged with it. And I think it's come a long way, and I don't want to be a complainer, but I think there are things that can be really improved with what we've started with. I'm glad that this is a preliminary plat, and we have the time to do that and to make those needed changes. Everything that I've heard tonight from the public, I think I agree with almost every single word. And so the things that I'm very happy to see are the path going through the property and down onto First Avenue. I think that's a great solution for this neighborhood. I like the innovative way that Mark has, as he described and the architect described, deconstructed those roads in between, those north-south roads in between the townhouses. I think that's very innovative, and I think it's insightful, and it's a good way to treat this project. However, I think they missed a couple things on that, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. And then I wanted to talk about my support of keeping that 20-foot buffer between the park and that first set of townhomes. So if I wanted to look at that landscape plan just so it would be easier, but a typical road in Longmont, as you guys know, is house, setback, sidewalk, tree lawn, street, and then you repeat, right? And so what they did on this plan, if you can bring up that landscape plan for me and just kind of look at it, is we've got townhouse, road, townhouse, sidewalk, townhouse, road, townhouse, sidewalk, right? So if you deconstruct the street, then you have, and two streets, then you have two sidewalks, and then you have 4 setbacks, and you have 2 tree lawns, right? So altogether you have 4 tree lawns, 4 sidewalks. What they did when they put everything back together was they ended up with 3 sidewalks and no tree lawns. The tree lawns could potentially be the buffers on the other side, but as John Loughran just mentioned, that corridor down the middle, right, is only, I think I measured it at 19 or 17 feet, something like that. Maybe it's a little bit more, I can't remember. Maybe it's 20 feet. But all I'm saying is that you deconstructed the road, you didn't put all the parts of the road back. So we're losing landscape into the project that way. And what that does is it allows for larger units or more units on the property instead of keeping those code specified things together, right? So I applaud the innovative use of the street. I don't applaud not putting all the parts back. The other thing is the administrative adjustments. A lot of those, especially the transparency adjustment, terrific idea. I don't want to see glass on garage doors. I would rather see them up in the buildings. It's a terrific idea. Thank you for doing that. And I think the landscape plan, I think it's beautiful. I think that just the way that they've done the amenities and designed all that stuff out, they've done a really, really solid job with that. So I really think that the bones of the project are there. It is adhering to the concept plan that we all work so hard to get to. But what I think isn't happening is that those units are either too big or there's too many of them. I mean, there's only so much space down there, right? He's had to limit it down to 61 units, and I really appreciate that he's done that. But there are still, you've had to make 100% modifications. So there's, to the entire site, they are asking for administrative modifications on 100% of the site. On 75% of the site, they are asking for more than 25%. So that's a lot of modifications. And they didn't even bring up the whole deconstructed street not being reconstructed. So my solution, if there was, follow what people are saying, I just think the units are either too big or they're too many. Keep it to at least a 25% across the board and keep that 20-foot buffer. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Last on my list is Chris Conklin. Conklin, my goodness. Chris Conklin? Chris Conklin? I've slotted your name 3 times, and you're not here. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to come up and speak? Having not been on the list doesn't preempt you from coming up and sharing your thoughts. Chris Conklin, going once, twice, and now I will close the public hearing aspect of this meeting and turn it back to the commission. And I'm going to take the lead and ask some questions, I think, of Don and possibly of Jeremy, if Jeremy's still around. If not, Glenn, maybe you'll have to pinch hit here. Specifically, I'm looking at, it's attachment 8 of the materials that were submitted to us, which is the 2023 ordinance approving the concept plan. And in section 2 thereof, there was a requirement that the concept plan meet 5 different conditions within 12 months of the passage of this ordinance. And my questions are, did indeed all of this happen within the last 12 months? Specifically, I was kind of concerned about the submission of design exceptions regarding access spacing that don't conform to the design standards and construction specifications of the city of Longmont. Jeremy and I had spoken briefly about this beforehand, but now he's not here. Don, unfair to put it on you, but do you have a DRC position to share with us regarding?
Jeremy. There he is.
There's Jeremy. The question I promised to ask, I'm asking, but you were gone. Welcome back. So the 2023 city ordinance approving the concept plan required certain matters be completed within 12 months of the approval. Specifically, satisfaction of submission requirements, completion of an updated traffic plan, submission of design exceptions, and a requirement that the massing character study represents the quality of subsequent development and that the number of units is limited to 63. With respect to the matters requiring affirmative action, and Don, I guess you can weigh in, and Jeremy, you can confirm. Those were with respect to the concept plan, or did they apply to this preliminary plat application that we're looking at right now?
Chairman Height, Don Burchett, Planning and Development Services. What I would, I did not work on this project in 2023, so I spoke with the planner who did. I can tell you that my understanding of the conditions 2 through 5 was that these were items that the intention was that they be met at any final approvals. So that everything, for example, the traffic studies would be updated, that the exceptions would be approved, that, in other words, the approval of the concept plan was not granting any kind of variances or modifications to the standard because the design of that concept plan that was approved did not have the detail nor make a request to be granted a variance. And we wanted to be clear that no one would come back and go, well, we showed you the road was going to be in this location, council approved it, you have to let us put it there. That was the intention of those conditions 2 through. I think what probably should have happened, and I'm as responsible as anybody sitting here at this meeting, is that we probably should have noted that those were not conditions of the recording of the actual ordinance, because item number 1 is from the land development code requirement that is standard for all ordinances that we approve for land development. But items 2 through 5 should have been listed as conditions of approval that needed to be met prior to final, or either prior to or at the time of final plat.
So which backs me up to Mr. Terrell's opinion of the lead-in to this section 2, which says all of these need to occur within 12 months of approval of this ordinance. How does that figure in?
Good evening, again, Chair Height, members of the commission. The application before you tonight is the preliminary plat application and the 4 conditions of administrative modifications. So I'm going to answer your question by not answering your question, and instead refer back to the application and the decisions before you tonight. So the commission's decision is not whether or not, there's a violation of the concept plan amendment ordinance. The only time the concept plan amendment ordinance really comes into effect is whether or not the preliminary plat application you're looking at complies with it. Looking at the conditions, the updated traffic analysis, there was an updated traffic analysis done. It's in your packet. Submission of a design request extension for access spacing that did not conform to the standards. We weren't talking about that at concept plan amendment time. That's what we're talking at now. Massing and character study, which should be submitted as representative of the quality. Again, we're not at that point yet. And then the dwelling units is limited to 63. I didn't do the math in the preliminary plat because I'm really bad at math, but I assume there's fewer than 63 units.
There are only 61, but the issue came up for me, and why I'm raising this issue is when I was looking at the traffic plan and then looking at the 4 administrative exemptions. They seem to fit into 2 and 3. And when I look at 2 and 3, they seem to have a 1-year time limitation on them from 2023. And I'm looking at the traffic plan may squeeze in there because it was in August of 2024 and this was approved in October of 23. But these design exceptions, to the extent that these administrative modifications are design exceptions regarding access spacing, which they don't really seem to be, but they are design exceptions. They didn't come until November of 2025, I think. So they would be untimely if I'm reading this right. Your opinion is
Doesn't matter.
not to make an opinion. Okay.
Doesn't matter, just because going back to the first thing I said before I went through the items was that the application before the commission denies preliminary plat application and the 4 requested modifications.
Okay. Lawyers from the University of Michigan can differ on their opinions. The next issue I have is to bring Mr. Young back and maybe Josh Sherman to talk about whether or not a gravel road is workable, and then whomever else might have an opinion on whether or not, or how this suggested modification from 9 feet to 14.5 feet for the buffer zone could apply based upon Mr. Young's conditions that he suggested. Josh, you want to talk about the road first, if you're the right guy to talk about the road? Have you seen this proposal before? No. I think it was just put together this afternoon.
Correct. Good evening, Commissioner Height and members of the commission. Josh Sherman, engineering administrator with Public Works. Correct. I have not seen, nor as far as I know, any of the Public Works staff seen the proposed conditions that the developer has provided.
Okay.
Other than now, so I would only reiterate what planning has said, which is part of the requirements of staff was that a public right-of-way be dedicated in the east-west direction for connectivity, to meet the code intent of connectivity between this proposed subdivision and future development to the west.
And with respect to dedicated roads, do we allow those to be partially developed and used as parking?
Typically, no. So what's shown in the packet and what's in the plans for the preliminary plat are shown some future improvements of that right-of-way. But as of right now, those future improvements are not required necessarily as a part of this development, right? So build out of that right-of-way is not necessarily intended or a functional requirement of this development.
more basically, granularly, is it permitted, if this is a dedication to the city, can a private developer then go ahead and partially develop it without some type of city approval or participation?
We would certainly want to have some review and input on any proposed improvements within that right-of-way, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Mr. Young, you more to add?
Yes, I completely agree with Josh. The condition that I enumerated said that, and we can make this available to you if you decide you want to make this a condition of the approval tonight, is that we would endeavor to try to get it approved, and if it was not approved, then the project would be allowed to go on without this parking being there. Do understand we've got, I think, 182 parking spaces where 140 would normally be required. It shouldn't be an issue, but as a, part of our community, cohesiveness and all, we wanted to accommodate where we could.
And
so,
to clarify one issue that a member of the public raised, which is that possibly, apparently, there's 3 unassigned surface parking areas in the development?
well, if you recall from staff's presentation, there's actually 15. So there's 12. So you've got Spruce Street. We gave up 9 feet on the end of our property to recess 12 parking spaces off of Spruce Street. And then we have 3 additional ones at the bottom of the site.
Okay.
And then each one of the, so 33 of the homes have a 2-car garage and an 18-foot wide driveway that can also accommodate 2 cars. So there's a lot of extra parking on the site.
4 more cars.
Yeah.
4 cars, okay.
Yep, tons of parking.
Great. Your second
Condition?
conditional offer, right, with respect to the buffer zone to move it to 14 feet, 14 and a half feet from 9 feet. Am I
Right.
understanding that correctly? Conditioned upon allowing within that setback, I call them appurtenances, a 3-foot wide patio, a foundation, and a egress window well?
Yeah, so essentially what I'm saying is, so the face of the house, where the house is 2 stories, would be set back, 14 and a half feet, and an additional 10 foot, which is the required front yard setback. So the face of the house would be set back 24 and a half feet from the property line of the park. What would be allowed to extend into the front yard setback would be a front porch, unenclosed, 3 foot deep, a foundation under the front porch that would support the front porch that I could also incorporate into my basement living space there, and any steps up to the front porch. And then if we needed them, we could have some egress window wells that would, be in front there to support the basement.
Okay. Don, is there a position on what the city allows in setbacks, front yard setbacks? Does that violate the setback by 3 feet?
Just as an example, we have exceptions in the land development code speaking to a number of these items, but as an example, our window wells are typically found either in the side yard or in the backyard, not in the front, as an example. So our encroachment for a window well allows it to go into a required front yard or yard 3 feet. So this sitting here today not knowing exactly what it is, I think we could accommodate, or if the commission were to specifically grant those, I don't think they're outside of the exceptions that we currently have outlined in code. Another example is the front, let me find it here. Front porches and stoops may encroach up to 8 feet into a required front yard, provided such porch or stoop is not enclosed and is not closer than 5 feet from any property line. So as long as it's not 5 feet from the property line, we could accommodate it under this existing exception. But if it was less than 5, then the commission would need to agree to that change. But
Well, yeah.
sitting here today, I don't know that I see anything that concerns me with the request.
It sort of seems like a generous offer to go from 9 feet or 51% to 14 feet, almost to 25%. Seems generous. Those are my initial questions. I open it up to the rest of the council to raise their questions.
If I might add something, I don't know if it's
Sure.
appropriate or not, but the reason why we don't have 100 people in here tonight is because we worked with the community, and, you know, that 14 and a half foot might seem generous, but it was part of the deal.
Well, I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I think you probably are correct. You've done a lot of work to ameliorate, to satisfy a lot of people's concerns.
Great.
With that, Vice Chair Poland.
Thank you. Just to confirm, so along Spruce Avenue, and because some of the concerns was traffic along Spruce and the fact that currently there's parking on both sides of the street, that actually seems like it's going to get better by this plan because there is a 9-foot coming in, so there's still going to be parking on both sides of the street. It's just on the south side, it's going to be 9 feet further to the south, correct?
Correct.
So to me, that seems like that's actually going to help some of the traffic concerns in that area. I'll leave it up for other people to discuss the going from the 9 to the 14 and a half feet, but I like the idea. I'm still noodling around in my head. With the Park Place and the parking, so we need to have a right-of-way established for a road to go east-west. And how wide is that road? Or how wide does that right-of-way have to be?
So we've dedicated 30 feet there.
Okay. Don, and how wide does it have to be?
Under our standard, and I'll let Josh or Rachel speak to this, is that you can propose the appropriate width of the right-of-way to accommodate what is expected need for the right-of-way. And I'll let Josh correct everything that I've said that's inaccurate.
And me too.
I would only add that Don is correct in terms of minimum right-of-way width and what's trying to be accommodated in that right-of-way. In terms of travel lane, the minimum width is 20 feet, and that's
Okay.
really driven by emergency services.
Okay, so they've kind of put an extra buffer of 10 feet or so into the plan, and that was before considering they wanted to do the parking.
I'm sorry, what area are you
Park
asking?
Place, the width of Park Place.
It's a little connector street.
Yeah. So, again, it's with the proposed there's a proposed cross-section, future cross-section for that street. It's 26 feet, I believe.
Okay.
Flow line to flow line. So 20 feet, I said, was the minimum. 26 feet is required by fire when you need access to 3 stories because they got a bigger engine. But, and then to make up the rest of the 33, there's an attached sidewalk for multimodal connectivity.
Okay. So I guess my question is, I hesitate, and I know that the public seems to be in approval of looking at this, but I hesitate saying let's put in parking knowing that at some point down the road, that's going to become a road.
Can you park on a 26-foot wide?
No, 26 foot wide is not wide enough to park on. So I would agree that if the question is, if you make it parking now, are you going to be able to get rid of parking in the future if that's not the intended use in the future?
Exactly.
I would also add, and I think Commissioner Height, Chairman Height may have asked this earlier, and I don't know that I answered it fully, but we would typically try to refrain from constructing a dead-end street. Right, so making improvements within right-of-way that create a dead end without some form of a
that's where they were
turnaround.
talking about doing a turnaround down the back end.
Understood.
Yeah. I'm still kind of caught on, do I really want to start parking knowing that's, I don't know how long in the future, but at some point in the future, there's plans for that to become a road or to be used as a road, and then what happens with the parking. Given the fact that there already seems to be enough parking, while it seems like it's a good idea, it may be too much mental gymnastics to try to get this working and what's going to happen in the long term with it. I hate to do something now that will somehow cause issues in the future. But overall, I like this. I like the preliminary plat. It follows what we laid out for the concept plan. Some of the modifications that they're asking for, I don't have a problem with. A couple narrower lots, I think, has been brought out by a couple of people in the public. We need to do some things sometimes to not encourage, but to have smaller houses that will be more affordable. So I have no problems with some of the reduced widths and lengths of some of the lots. And as I said, I'm still noodling around with what to do with the city park and those 6 lots next to it. And I'd like to hear from some of the other commissioners.
I'm going to take the opportunity to ask Jeremy another question, which is with respect to administrative modifications. As I read, I think it's 1502080B. Any property that used to be PUD, there are no percentage limitations, or the director has the authority to ignore, to make any adjustment. And this property, once upon a time, was zoned PUD. Do you see that? Do you agree with that?
Good evening again, Chair Height. That is what the code says, and Grant confirmed it was zone PUD. But moreover, the one right before it, C, it talks about infill development, and this has been determined to be infill, which is not subject to that 25% requirement. And meaning it could exceed the 25%.
Yeah, I see that both accommodate get you to the same ends.
Yes.
Okay.
I just feel better about infill versus the PUD because that might have lapsed, and I'm not exactly sure how we'd consider the lapse versus any of that. So,
Point taken. Seat 7 is, I'm so sorry, Commissioner Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, everyone, for the comments and the applicant for everything. I want to address a couple of the comments I heard from the community and just make sure I'm understanding correctly. And so specifically, we're looking at the front and side yard setbacks that were raised up here. And it's the image that you had in the communication and Don that you had in the PowerPoint where you had the kind of the red lines that showed where those setbacks were. I'm just a little bit, I want to see if you guys can walk through that a little bit more, given the fact that we have outlot setback, kind of what's the practical setback? Because we had at least some concern about this being a canyon and very narrow. And I'm having trouble reconciling it in my head, given the property lines and where the setbacks are a little bit, if that makes sense.
So typically, as when we started this, basically there would be a center line where the property would be. You can see outlined in red is where that outlot is. But since that then became an outlot, the give was, the ask was to still measure from the center line. So the distance between those buildings, just to give everyone the real numbers, is from porch to porch is 20 feet. From building face, at a minimum, the lot, they move a little bit and they get a little bit wider than that. And from building to building is 25 feet. So right now we have, I think that outlot is 6 foot wide, Jason. And then we have a setback. Yep, it might be, because 5 foot and then 1 foot on each side. And then a setback, and then it adds up to building 25 foot.
And so the 20 feet porch to porch, 25 feet building to building, that's what the code requires if that was not an outlot, if that was basically in the condo scenario. And I'm probably not saying
yes, in the
technically
condo
correct.
scenario, and I would make the argument, even in this scenario, it could not be an outlot and it could still be taken care of, managed in the normal way.
Okay. So the setback really is kind of the technicality of the outlot rather than trying to make the buildings closer together.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so still 20 feet is, I mean, it's not a lot, but it is what the code allows. We're not
No, we're
deviating
not
from the
breaking code or
here.
anything like that.
We're just doing so in a way because of the outlot.
Yes.
Okay. The park setbacks.
Yes.
At 14 and a half feet. I guess Mark, you said something in this last comment, and I'm trying to get the numbers in my brain here. Because you were talking about 9 feet, a setback, and then maybe, how far is the front of the building from that fence line in the current preliminary plat that we see before us with the 9 feet requested?
It's 19 feet.
So 10 plus 9.
Yep. 10 plus
And
9.
what you've basically requested is, or what you've agreed to accept is 10 plus 14 and a half.
That's correct.
With the porch and a few of the exceptions we talked through.
Right, and we
Okay.
just split the baby, because the difference was 11 feet. So we went 5.5 on top of the 9. That's how we came up with the 14.5.
And if I remember right from, I don't remember if it was you or the architect that showed, the plan basically had fence, which is where we're measuring this.
Yes.
Tree line,
Yep.
sidewalk, property line.
Correct.
And so we're saying that fence, tree, sidewalk up to the property line is 14 and a half now.
Correct.
So the property lines all get smaller.
Correct. The property shrink.
And the outlot then, effectively the HOA's future outlot gets bigger.
It gets bigger. That's right.
Thank you. The other one, and I'm right with the vice chair on the park place, I'm concerned and confused about the parking. I understand the desire to have more parking. I get the commercial vehicle concern that's been raised by the community a lot. I'm very confused how that proposal actually works. And partly the timing here of you improving it when the right-of-way gets dedicated to the city, what it becomes, just the technicality of that, I guess, under the proposal.
Let me explain for just a moment. So this was not my idea. I met with the community, and this was their idea. I thought it was a good idea, and I'd like to do it if I can. And that's the commitment I made to them. And so I'll try really hard to get you guys to agree to do it. I mean, let me just point out that even if it's just temporary, if there's a burden, now I don't believe that there's going to be a parking burden. I don't believe it at all. And I told the community that. I think we've overparked the site. But I also think that, it calms everybody's nerves, except for mine, and gets, puts everybody in the right spirit. And the reason why we don't have 100 people in the room tonight is because of the concessions I was willing to make. But even the community recognized that this might not be allowed. I mean, that's why in the condition it said, I'd make my best efforts to get this done, and if it can't be approved, then it goes away. I'd sure like you to try to figure it out and see if we can't figure it out, and I'm committed to paying for it if we can figure it out.
I guess and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the compromise with the community. I'm struggling with logistics of that more than I am whether it's a good idea or not. Because I like the idea. I'm a little reluctant to it being a condition on the development, frankly, as opposed to something I think you should do, which is a little bit of a different standard.
Sure, and I'd like to remind you that the reason why we had to compromise at all on the park buffer was because we have these hard lines to the north, the south, and the west. And so when we had to put that road in, we took up park space, and the park department had originally agreed that they would contribute land to the road. And it turned out they couldn't because of our annexation agreement. They couldn't contribute land. So that's the only reason why we're asking for the modification to the buffer. And this was thrown at us at the 11th hour, this road. I was not happy about it. Plus I lost 2 units.
I think just on parking more broadly, so beyond the road, we've talked about, I think it was 180 spaces.
Yep, 182.
182. Those are primarily in the garages. inside the units, correct?
No. There are 121, I think, 121 in the garages. There are, I believe, 66 or 63. You got it?
Yep.
Okay, give them the numbers.
Real numbers, 110 in the garages, 57 in the driveway spaces, 3 down on the south, 12 on the spruce.
And so the 57, I think you just said, driveway
57
spaces.
in the driveway.
So those are, basically resident guest of that unit, but it's
Yes.
owned by that unit. It is not a public
That's correct.
space.
So keep
okay.
in mind what the purpose of these parking spaces are for, right? They're for tradesmen, deliveries, things like that. So when you've got, so those 33 units that have the long driveways, they have their parking for their tradesmen and stuff built in. So there's really only 28 units that don't have access to guest parking, right? 28 units. So if we supply for that, if we use the 0.2 units per parking spaces per unit, that would mean we should provide you about 12, I believe, units. No, 6 units. We should provide 6 more parking spaces, which we have 3 there. So there are 3 units, 3 at the lower part and 12 up on Spruce in the land that we've dedicated for that parking. So we've amply parked the place anyway.
Understood, and I appreciate that. I'm really just trying to make sure that we're basically addressing what the community is raised concerns about. I mean, when I looked through the preliminary plat, I believe it meets the criteria that we have to review. I believe the variances on the lot width, the transparency, and the front set yard side backs, I'm okay with those. Frankly, I'm not too concerned about the 9 feet, but the 14.5 is even better. On the landscaping buffer, it's really the Park Place parking. I'm just logistically struggling with recognizing that it is an attempt to provide a solution above and beyond what's required. I'm having trouble wrapping my brain around how we do that from a condition standpoint. But
Understood.
I'll go to other commissioners for questions, and appreciate you being so willing to talk through it with us.
I won't. I'll go to Commissioner Poland.
Don, real quickly about the park. Currently, there's no parking shown for it. When we create city parks, do we often, sometimes, never include parking at the park?
Commissioner Poland, on the plan, the applicant is proposing to provide some parking on Spruce Street on the north end of the park. That's my understanding from the preliminary plat. And as a standard, it typically is determined from the park department when they are programming the park what the need will be for parking. So, for example, a large community park like Sandstone Ranch, ball fields, things like that are going to have more people that are going to be driving, that it's going to serve more than just the neighborhood because it's a draw. So the parking that is intended and provided in those is at a greater level, but the Parks Department determines what that is. When you get to these smaller community parks or neighborhood parks that are truly meant to serve more of the neighborhood, they're not meant to be a destination park. So we do expect there will be some families that will drive over to the park because maybe they live on the other side of 3rd Avenue and they just want to come down to this park and use maybe a new swing set or something that their children enjoy. There will be some parking there that's provided, but the determination of whether additional beyond what's added to that street would be up to the Parks Department when they're programming the construction of this park. And my understanding of the way that the programming works is that the Parks Department works with the neighborhoods and invites them to help to design and understand what they feel they need in the neighborhood, not just what somebody who's sitting in an office 3 miles away thinks is the appropriate construction for that park.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question now. This is in regards, looking back again at Park Place, but we're looking at the preliminary plat. and there's going to be a final plat. And I kind of am antsy about trying to do something about this in the very short term here tonight. I'm just wondering, what kind of differences can appear between a preliminary plat and a final plat? And is this something that can be evaluated by staff between the two and then added to the final plat if it's deemed appropriate?
So Commissioner Poland, are you, I was pulling up the plat again when you're talking. The first part, was it regarding the parking on Park Place? Or was it another issue?
Yeah, the parking. It's the parking on it, and I hate to try to shoehorn a solution to that tonight, but given that this is the preliminary plat, is this something that can be evaluated and then included in the final plat?
So I think if the commission were to make it a condition, but leave the final determination up to staff, I think that could be an appropriate way, with the understanding that the applicant, if he disagrees, could appeal it back to the planning commission from staff for the final plat, and you could evaluate the request based on the information that was presented.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank you, Mark, and staff, and the community. It sounds like there's been a lot of collaboration and compromises, so that's great to see. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone coming up and providing feedback on this. I had a couple questions before I jump into some thoughts, because my mind's not made up entirely yet. First was for you, Don, on Spruce. Do we have sidewalks on both sides of the street, I assume? Because one of the community members said that it was difficult to get up and down on the street, and they're concerned. They noted people walking in the, it sounded like the middle of the road as opposed to the sidewalks, and they were concerned with the additional traffic, what that would cause in terms of safety. I assume we have sidewalks, but I don't know.
I'm looking at the Google map because I unfortunately did not get out there today. I apologize again, filling in here. Looking at Google Maps, it does not appear that there are any sidewalks on this property or many of the properties on the south side of Spruce Avenue. And it looks like there are some on the north side, and then there's some areas blocked by trees that I can't tell for sure. So the neighbors, if I've got it wrong, and Mark could probably correct me, but I believe there are none on the south side between Grant and Francis Street.
You have that right, and we are extending the sidewalk from Grant to the end of our property.
Okay, thank you, Mark. The question I had, I also understand Spruce is narrower than what we would build today if we were building a new street. It's narrower than the 30-foot or something like that.
I would have to defer to Public Works on that.
Okay.
I'm not the expert.
Josh, maybe you can.
Good evening, Commissioner. This actually came up during the concept plan amendment. So Spruce Avenue is, I believe, 28.5 feet flow line to flow line.
Okay.
So that standard cross-section would allow for travel lane in each direction and parking on one side of the street.
Gotcha.
So that street's width does meet a typical section.
And while you're up here, I guess the question I have is on narrower streets, and I'm not sure if this is the general consensus of staff or not. It'd be great to toss this question to Phil if he were here, but is narrower streets a way we can do traffic calming?
Certainly narrowing street sections is a way to achieve traffic calming, yes.
So I did look at the traffic engineer, or the traffic impact study. It looked like there was another 45 new weekday AM and 51 new weekday PM peak hour trips that we were expecting, and it looked like, based on the assessment, that we think Spruce can handle it. But I assume this wouldn't be cars necessarily racing up and down if the Spruce is narrow as it is.
Correct. The traffic study, I don't know that it did a speed study, but
Gotcha.
the traffic study did evaluate, and what you referenced in terms of the additional estimated traffic volume sounds like what I recall.
So the other thing, and this is also on transport, because this is a denser development than what's around it, what do we have in terms of like bus stops and bike path access? I couldn't find that on the traffic study.
I don't know that I can speak to bus stops, so I'll defer on that. I can speak a little bit to multimodal access as it relates to trails. So obviously St. Vrain Creek and the St. Vrain Greenway are immediately south. There is some connectivity to that from Isaac Walton Pond. And there's some connectivity, I believe, proposed, and I'll let Mark jump in here where I get a little bit off, from this development down to First Avenue. And then as well as from Spruce over to Grant, which is the sidewalk connection that the applicant was referring to, that they're going to extend from their frontage east to Grant Avenue to provide for that additional sidewalk connectivity, which then Grant would have the multimodal access further south.
So we'll see some additional continuity in the forms of at least bike and pedestrian traffic.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm kind of going through my notes here. On the fire access and whatnot, I know we're kind of tight in the middle there. I assume that the fire department has reviewed, and pardon me, I thought that was in one of the attachments, but we're good from their perspective in terms of access with all the equipment that they would bring in.
Yes, the fire department has reviewed these plans.
And what about the narrowing of setbacks? Does that pose any additional fire risk of fire moving from building to building?
I'll take this one, even though.
Sorry.
I'll play fire chief for a minute. What I would say is that my understanding is that because of the building code, these units will be sprinkled. They will have to meet when we adopt this year the 2024 building codes. They will meet the newest standards. There is always a risk to our community in the event of any kind of major wildfire or natural disaster, and whether or not these are hardened homes or not, a natural disaster could take out the best constructed project. But from the standpoint of the review from the fire department, they have looked at it for both their access and their ability to set up their units to be able to fight a fire in this area if there was one, and they have found that it meets the minimum requirements that the code sets for them to have access and be able to provide service in the neighborhood.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you all fielding those questions. Let me just throw out my thoughts, and then I'll kick it back to my fellow commissioners here. I guess firstly, with regards to the modifications, I think that the lot width, I don't have any issues with. I think we do need some variance in size of units to cover a variety of different affordability situations. As far as the setbacks, if the fire department has reviewed, we don't feel like we have an issue either getting equipment in there, and we'll have sprinklers in the units. I'm not too concerned about those setbacks because it looked like they wouldn't negatively detract from the appearance or anything like that from the, let's just call it the neighborhood facing aspects of the development. It looked like it was more a kind of a clever compromise to meet a lot of different competing needs. So I appreciate that. As far as the transparency, I'll echo fellow commissioners. I think, garage is opaque, it's fine. The park buffer, I think that what the community has said should be heard. It sounds like that, Mark, you're willing to work with that. I think the 14 and 6 inches, if we can find a way to work that in, I think we should. That's my opinion there. And then lastly, I noticed that I will say this is not going to impact my opinion, but looking through this would be the criteria evaluation point 3 when we talk about it's compatible with surrounding properties. I noticed that of all the public comment, this didn't come up. So again, this is just me saying something real fast and then I'll move on. The appearance of what's been shown does not seem timeless in a sense that we'll look back in 100 years and think it fits in. And I understand that we're approving the plat in modifications. And I'm hoping that in between now and any future development, we can maybe work on some of those materials so that they blend in a little bit better. But that's my 2 cents and will not impact my vote tonight. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmad, Commissioner Ahmad.
Okay, I just wanted to, because there's been some discussion on Park Place, put my 2 cents in on the Park Place issue. And something I noticed looking at the cross-section of the right-of-way, we are at, it's currently specified at 26 flow line to flow line, 26 feet with a 5-foot sidewalk. And I believe it was it was established already that 28 or 29 feet would provide one-way parking, right? That might be a question for someone with expertise in. Yeah, 26. But I am curious, I guess the main question is, would we be able to have a sidewalk rather in the road right-of-way in the park area? I don't know if that's something that would be doable, rather than dedicating the road right-of-way and then being able to dedicate some of that right-of-way for parking. Is that something that's workable?
So I can address the first part of the question.
Yeah.
I'll refrain from addressing the second part of the question
Understood.
since I don't want to speak for the Parks Department, but 28.5 feet, it was the dimension for flow line to flow line for 2 travel lanes and parking on one side.
Okay, so with a 33 right-of-way, it's potentially feasible to have a 28.5 flow line to flow line, roughly.
We would also want to maintain the multimodal access, which is the sidewalk.
Okay.
That is also shown within that 33 feet.
That, I guess, so there wouldn't be a precedent for moving that multimodal access to the park area? Or?
Just off the top of my head, one of the challenges that you may run into is that the park does not abut the adjacent right-of-way, so there's another lot that would, you couldn't fit that entire cross-section through.
Okay.
If I'm describing that very well.
I
I'm not going to draw. Here. We can go to the other. There was a. You draw.
So what I believe Josh is describing is that if you push the sidewalk onto the city property here, the adjacent property, this lot,
yes,
the sidewalk would have to either come down or it would also have to go on to this other lot, which is already narrow.
Understood, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that makes sense.
I
That
interpreter. I thought you literally meant draw. I'm not sure.
I just wanted to say that once we dedicate the land to the parks, they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
But I can't eat in to the park space anymore, right?
Makes sense. I was just trying to think if there was a way to include the parking, since I know parking was a point of contention here. And then I guess also just to clarify for me, I know that traffic generated by the site was a concern. It does seem from the traffic report that it notes that it was consistent with background conditions. I don't know, would it be too much to ask to define level of service B?
I have my traffic guy here if you want.
Yes, I would defer the traffic question to their engineer, if that's okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Horan is the traffic engineer on this project and the co-housing project. I've been involved with this site for a very long time. Could you repeat the question?
I'm just wondering, in the traffic report, because a complaint was brought up from the community about the traffic and how this potentially could impact it, just to be sure that the report states level of service B. I'd just like to understand what that actually means for the traffic in the site.
Level of service B?
Yeah.
So we, as traffic engineers, look at basically an A through F scale. So typical with schools, A being the best, F being the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And different jurisdictions will assign a level of service limit. So a lot of jurisdictions designed a level of service D or maybe E before we start offering mitigations, turn lane signals, things of that nature. So level of service B is exceptionally good. And the report states that this development, so the original traffic study was done, depending on what you say original, but for this was at 70 units. So our findings are at a higher development level than what is being proposed now. So now we're down to 61 units. So everything that was in the original report still maintains. This development represents even less traffic impact than the original report. So it'll be B or better. Maybe it's A. So that's, hopefully that answers that question.
That makes sense, and makes sense that no mitigations would be required then. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Do you have more?
I think that was all I had. Thank you.
Is it Brian? It is. Can you come back for a quick second? Sorry. It's your updated traffic report? 'Cause
Correct.
you've been around for forever on this project?
Correct, yes.
And the report that I'm looking at, August of '24, I believe, updated something from earlier, where you went from 70 units to 63 units.
Now we're at
less
61.
impact. Now we're at 61, even lesser of a lesser impact. My question was, in one of those concept plans, there were three loops, if you will. Now there's only two loops, and the lower loop is, I want to say, an alley standard. I might be saying that wrong. Built to be an alley. My question is, the reconfiguration of the road and whether or not it's an alley, does that impact your analysis at all? Or is it just number of units?
I would say number of units has the biggest impact. Right, what we're trying to determine is what off-site requirements would need to happen, turn lane signals, that kind of thing. I think the on-site layout may affect how we redistribute to the access points to the public network, but in terms of how it flows within the site, I've worked with the design team to just make sure that we're not causing any conflicts. Staff does that as well. So a long answer for the units is the biggest impact. The number of units is the biggest
Okay.
impact to the roadway. On-site is a little more for distributions. That didn't have a significant impact to our findings.
Okay. Then this description of the northern loop is a street, but the southern loop is, I'm going to misquote it because I don't have it on top of my head, built to street standards but treated as an alleyway. Do you know what that means? Were you part of that decision, that design protocol?
I may be able to
Mr. Sherman, you
field
were.
this question.
Go ahead, yeah.
Sure. So the discussion is around when lots are created, they need to have access to right of way, and is what really drove that decision, as I recall, when the applicant was talking about, are these private drives within this type of development, or do they need to be public right of way? As Don described earlier, with public right of way, we can look at, what does that minimum right of way section need to be to accommodate the minimum improvements? So in this case, the minimum improvement to the lower loop within the right of way are just the traveled way, so curb and gutter to curb and gutter. Maybe the best description was what I heard earlier, is the right of way has been deconstructed a bit. So that multimodal access is that is traditionally provided within the right of way is being provided within the development, just in a different location, right? It's those sidewalks that are bringing users to the front doors. Those aren't necessarily within the right of way, but they're within the development.
Got it. And I think the comment was, I think it was from Mr. Jones, that deconstructed, but the reconstruction is a little off in terms of if you account for all of the amenities that were in the originally to be constructed road. Now deconstructed, reconstructed, you have less tree roads or tree lawns, you have less sidewalk. More granularly to me, particularly looking at note 6 in the plat and then looking at some other stated exemptions because the road is an alley, setbacks change, and I think that's it, that the setbacks change when you call it an alley as opposed to a street. Is that correct?
Are the
Am I
setbacks the same?
misunderstanding?
It's the setbacks from the property line or the right-of-way, I believe, whether that's an alley right-of-way or a street right-of-way, the setback is from the right-of-way. The difference may be what we call is whether it's a rear setback or a front setback for a rear-loaded product onto that alley or right-of-way versus a front-loaded product onto that right-of-way.
And so Platinum 03, which caught my attention, was it said, the lots 5 and 6 of Block 5, which are, I don't know why they picked out those two lots. It would seem to me that the entirety of all of the multifamily lots would be exempt from the footage under 1507030E2, which basically says attached residential dwellings, townhomes in particular, the minimum street frontage is 20 feet unless access is from an alley, then they're exempt.
So I believe lots 5 and 6 of Block 3 are of Block. Oh, I'm
5.
sorry. Lots 5 and 6 Block. I'm looking at these.
5, you can't read it.
Block 2. Block 4. Chairman Hyde, I wonder if the lot and block numbering got reconfigured at somewhere along the way. The two lots that come to my mind that don't front the right-of-way that need the exception are the very southwest corner that essentially take access from an outlot that, somewhat act like a private drive onto, that then get you access onto the public right-of-way.
Oh,
So it's sort of like an auto court.
5 and 6 of Block 3?
Yes.
Huh, okay.
So the area. Josh is talking about these two lots right here. The block numbering must have gotten changed at some point, but it's these two lots. They have a an outlot in front of their property, so they don't meet the requirement for the frontage requirement on a public right-of-way, the width requirement. So that's what that note is talking about. So our code says if you're on a street, you have to have, I'm making up a number, 25 linear feet of frontage on a road.
It says 20, but go ahead.
Okay, well, sorry.
You were
Yeah,
close.
I'm pinch hitting here today, guys. You guys are lucky I'm hitting anything right now. But so what that is saying then, that exception is that this lot, we know does not have the required frontage on a street, and neither does this one. And it is an outlot that gives them access. We could have said, hey, give us the right-of-way give it to us as right-of-way. But then when we're looking at it from a maintenance and taking care of it from a city standpoint, having a dead end that only serves two lots is not an efficient way for us to maintain service. So we asked that that be put into an outlot and said that we would give them that exception.
And you took that?
I took it.
You had no choice. Okay. Well, that explains a lot. Yeah. Help me clarify what we were doing, and was that the reason we were treating this as an alley? But it's a different matter altogether. Good enough. Now I will, recognize Commissioner Wang.
Okay. So off that conversation, I just want to verify both the northern loop and the southern loop of Sherman Circle will be turned over to the city for their maintenance and repair,
Correct.
along with Park Place.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And I have a question for Mark. This is a follow-up to a comment you mentioned at the neighborhood meeting back in May 2014.
Okay.
March. You mentioned that you were going to connect Spruce Street down to First using the alleyway on the west side of the property.
So
Right of way. It looks like you only connected it up to Park Place, but you did not extend it all the way up to Spruce.
So I don't know, I don't have access to that alleyway. That's not ours, and I don't even know how it's governed right now.
It looks like according to public records, that is an actual connection that's available.
So can anybody address that? Because we looked into it when we were trying to make our backup, our turnaround for the cars.
Let me put up a drawing that might help. All right. So when we were doing the annexation for the 150 Francis Street, the adjacent property over here, we identified and worked with the county to determine that the city actually annexed in, and we technically have control over the right-of-way that exists for an alley that is shown, that goes all the way from Spruce all the way down, actually further than there at the corner of this property, actually continues further south. And that is part of the place where we are building and proposing to build the connection to get down to First Avenue for pedestrians and bikes to be able to get out of this neighborhood, and or people from the north to come through this area and go and use that area. So we'll use part of that alley for that. What happens to it going north, since it's adjacent to the park folks could look at that and determine if there's a use that they could see being viable.
Okay, and I was looking at the records. It looks like that right-of-way dead ends at 1400 First Street, and it continues to First. So have you talked to the Hildebrands about using their property about this?
So I could probably find it if you want to move on to another question, but my recollection was that when the Hildebrands came in and were annexed, in the annexation agreement, there was language related to that they would work with us to be able to accommodate a future trail to get down to that First Avenue. I can try to find that in the annexation agreement. If you guys want me to look that up, I'll do a quick search, see what I can find on that for you. But that's my understanding, is that we ensured a way for it to be constructed. Whether or not it exists today, I can't tell you.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that then, currently there's that community path from First to Francis Avenue through the Hildebrand property. Once this north-south path is built, do you know if they're going to close the east-west part?
I don't.
That's not the intention. That east-west access was also acquired at that same time through the Hildebrand annexation.
Okay, so once Park Place is built connecting to Francis, that east-west connection will not be closed also?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a soft surface trail on the
Yeah.
north side of the railroad tracks from First Avenue over to Sunset Street. That's what you're describing?
No, there's a little U-turn. You jog north on the from First, you go up north from the 1400 First Street, and then at the southern end of 150 Francis, it jogs to the west and connects to the dead end at Francis.
Right now, there's a path that comes off Francis,
Mm.
and drops down. And so he's
No, that's a community path. People bike it, walk it, run it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very nice path to connect.
I don't think the intent is to close anything off. And actually, to Don's point, I believe, if I recall the annexation agreement, it talks about the Hildebrands being required to dedicate a north-south connection from Francis Street to First Avenue, is actually how it's described. There's a similar one already in place if you, what's the street to the west? Scroll out just a little bit. No, you're okay. Thanks for driving. From Vivian Street south to that east-west access I was describing before.
Okay, yeah, I noticed that there is another one connection there too, but there's one that connects from First through the Hildebrand property to Francis, and that will not be closed.
I honestly think that's a social trail right now,
Yeah,
and that the
that's what
easement
it
may
is.
not be in place.
Okay,
and that the
so
intent
you're-
would be to get the easement in place.
So then you're saying that the connection north-south is in place, but the connection to Francis will not be there?
So another question,
Here's another question, because I was going to say, if people are going to be, if that section is closed and Park Place hasn't been extended to Francis yet, people are going to be biking through this neighborhood, through the Sherman Street, right? Through the Bond Farm neighborhood. And if they're going to do that, they're going to be going through the alleyways or the southern loop of the alleyway to access it.
The proposed southern right-of-way.
Yeah.
I think that's acceptable.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyone else? Commissioner Lang? Ooh. Said your name. There you are.
Thank you. Mr. Young, I was just looking at the block of houses to the east of the proposed park, and was it 6 looks like. I still don't quite understand the landscape buffer. By code, it's supposed to be 20 feet, right? And then,
Yes.
what was the thing? Go over that again. The compromise you made where you kind of split the difference.
Yeah, so initially, so we're all on the same playing field, the park was sized perfectly and had a 20-foot buffer. Then after Van Wagner annexed, we had to make this connection, this Park Place Street. The Parks Department agreed to provide half the land for Park Place, and then it turned out they couldn't provide the land for Park Place because the annexation agreement says the park dedication will be 0.85 acres. So I had to put the whole 30-foot right-of-way on my side, which impinged our park and our drainage. So the compromise that we worked with staff was to narrow the buffer to 9 feet, which put enough land back in the park to be at that 0.85. In fact, we're a little over. It's like 0.856 or 865 or something like that. That was our dedication. And so the community thought that we've heard from some people in the community who say that the houses should be closer to the park and so they're better engaged. But the predominant voice that I heard in the community said they wanted to see the buffer larger. They wanted 20 feet. I said, I can't do it. It kills these 6 units. And they said, well, let's compromise. And so we split the baby. And we agreed to a 5.5-foot increase in the buffer size. But I said I'd only do that in exchange for me being able to build unenclosed porches in the front yard setback.
Okay.
Could I just say one other thing about this? Because the original plan, because Park Place wasn't there, was longer, so it was a skinnier park. Then once Park Place got put there, the park did get wider, which could also be seen as a benefit.
Okay. And then on that block 2, you probably run this scenario, but it looks like lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 are proposed to have pretty much identical sized lots and houses. And then 1 and 6, a little larger lot and a little larger house on each of those. Does that sound correct?
I'm going to defer to my architect.
Okay.
Alex. Thanks.
They're all the same size, and back when we did the concept plan, they used to be 3 stories, but now they're 2 stories.
Okay.
And the reason why those lots are bigger is the turning radius needed for fire apparatus and road widths and all that.
And I lost 2 units.
Okay.
To the turning radius in the Park Place.
So if you tried to make that park just a little bit fatter even and shortened your 73.5-foot property lines in that block, how would that impact you? Pretty severely in terms of
If we want to make the park shorter?
wider?
Oh, yeah. See, so the orientation of the homes right now, if you make it any wider, it's got to crunch into the house, right? So it's got to take away developable square footage. And the way that what was described to me is if we had to go to the 20-foot buffer, we would have to put the living space up on the second floor, like the kitchen and stuff like that. And so you'd enter the house at the bedroom level, which is a little weird. And plus, it doesn't, I mean, if you looked at the drawings we had showing the comparison between the two, I mean, I don't think it's gonna make one lick of difference to anybody using the park. That if the houses are 24 feet away or 19 feet away. I mean,
Okay, that's a good comment about the turning radius there. So that it's not so much that 1 and 6 are bigger to afford a bigger house necessarily.
No.
It's just, okay.
I'm not even sure the houses are bigger. I don't think they are. They're all the same size.
When I look at attachment 3, and I look over at that table, lot area table, you got. Oh, the lot.
lot's
Okay,
bigger.
that's just talking about lot sizes.
Yeah, that's just lot sizes.
So have you guys proposed house sizes yet, or you just kind of?
Well, we've designed houses, and you've seen pictures of them.
Yeah, I know.
We have a matrix that's there, but I don't think that's, I mean, one of the things that slowed our project down was our first submittal for our preliminary plat. I was told that I'd submitted too much information. And we had a list of 85 things we had to supply, which we supplied. And then we were promptly told that was too much. So we had to dumb it down, and so we've done it. And we've met the submittal responsibilities for a preliminary plat, which I don't think includes, house sizes and stuff like that. I do have a matrix that I can share, but I'd have to dig it up.
But I mean, the main word here we're looking at is preliminary. So we're just basically trying to figure out lot lines and
Right.
number and that sort of thing.
Whatever unit we design now has to fit within the constraints of the lot lines that we're establishing tonight.
But looking at the concept plan, you're committed to, on that north and east edge, to only do 2-story
That's right.
dwellings, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then 3 in the middle blocks?
We can go 3 in the middle blocks, but a lot of that, oddly enough, is also constrained by fire. So
Okay.
you have to have a different distance between the units. I do think we're 3 stories on all the units in the middle, but then when we get to the park, again, those units are only 2-story units.
Okay. And then you had talked about the kind of the condo plan versus a townhouse plan. And so how does that look from an owner's perspective? If you're buying an attached dwelling, let's say on a, like a 5 or a 6 foot, unit, you're sharing walls with your neighbors, right? So,
Yep.
But you still own the dirt and you own the dwelling, correct?
That's right. You own the fee simple dirt below it, and you don't just own the airspace. You own the exterior of the building as well.
Okay. So say these are built and people buy them and then 10, 20 years down the road, they turn around and sell them. There's no issue there with.
No, we've built townhouse products all over the place.
They're not
Never had
considered
any
an
issues.
MTU then, multi-tenant unit, okay.
Now, some of them, if they have more than 6 units in the building, I think you have to build them to the code of an MTU, but they don't sell like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And condos, I think in Colorado in general they just don't develop them much. It's too much of a liability issue, isn't it? And from a builder's perspective?
I've done a ton of condo development. I actually like doing condo development. The laws are changing, but you have to buy special insurance, which oddly enough, you have to buy for townhouse projects too, because what they're protecting you against is collective bargaining by the homeowners. Anytime you have an HOA, you've got a collective bargaining entity that you can negotiate with. So what should be the cheapest product to build becomes grossly expensive when you have to put in fire sprinklers, buy special insurance, firewall protections between the units, stuff like that.
Didn't someone mention overhead sprinklers though?
Oh yeah, we've got sprinklers in our units.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Poland.
Thank you. I'm looking at the modification for landscape buffer. If we do go with what is being talked about, going to 14.5 feet, first of all, the first part of the sentence, giving the park an additional 11 feet of width, is that because they lost the Park Place And that's the 11, that's what got it wider? Is that 11 feet what got it wider?
It was narrower, then we lost Park Place.
Place.
And that's what made it wider.
And that, is that 11 feet mentioned in the landscape buffer at the beginning that added with it that you're giving to get it to the 0.85, 0.86 acres?
So there's sufficient land, the way we have it drawn, at a 9-foot buffer for the park to have the 0.85 acres.
Okay.
And but we had to modify the buffer in order to accommodate that land.
Right.
To put enough land in there.
Right. So my question is, all we have to do for this modification is change it from saying reducing the landscape buffer to 9.5, or reducing the landscape buffer to 9 feet. It's going to be reducing the landscape buffer to
14.5 feet.
Okay, 14.5 feet, correct.
That's right.
And then, I don't know if this is a Jeremy or Don, do we have to put in there the provision that he can build the patio / porches on that?
I want you to.
So that you're covered.
Yeah, I don't want to get in an argument 2 years from now.
And Don, what would
meant.
that look like? What would that terminology look like?
I have it written out very nicely right here. Just so you know.
Well played.
I aim to please. It would not hurt my feelings if you left it at 9 feet, but with respect to the community, I did promise them 14.5.
That you would try.
Yes, well, I think I said more than try.
Jeremy, if we make it conditional, that he would get a 14, we'd agree to a 14.5-foot setback if he could get permission to build a 3-foot unenclosed porch and a foundation and a egress window well. But it turns out none of that is approvable when it gets in front of DRC. Can we have it come back to us? Can we make that condition? If he can't get the approval that he wants, can we then ask that it come back to us to consider it again? To make it 9 to...
Commissioner Hyde, I think you can make this, I think you can add this language about the porch and stuff into this, and it becomes gospel once you guys approve it.
I think Don's ready to.
So Chairman Hyde, Commissioner Poland, I don't have any concerns with the condition as the applicant has written it for 2 reasons. One, the property line is has a shared property line between the outlot that's going to be owned by the HOA and the private lot that'll be owned by the homeowner. And there, on the preliminary plat, there are no easements in this area. So with the condition, as I understand it, any improvements that are built with this house would be within 2 feet of the new location of this property line. So the property line, this west property line, would shift over and be approximately 5 feet from the home. This would allow a 3-foot encroachment, which would be done 2 feet from the property line, give or take. I don't see an issue with that. So if the commission is amenable to getting a larger buffer, I don't foresee that this would cause us a problem in the construction or any other rules that we have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you know what? I'm going to make a motion, and we can continue to debate things after it, but let's see if this will fly. I do find that this meets 1502.055 of the Development Code, 1502.060 E2 of the Development Code, and 1502.080 B7 of the Development Code. I think I got those numbers right. Finding that, I am good with the first three modifications. So what I would like to do is approve PZR 2025-14B with a modification to the fourth modification of the landscape buffer and reducing the landscape buffer to 14.5 feet in the form of a trade and allowing, well, I guess I would like to include the text as it is with Don.
Which would say unenclosed front porches of no more than 3 feet, stairs to the entrance, egress window wells, and the foundation of the homes to be built along the park shall be allowed to encroach into the front yard setback.
Okay. That is my motion.
Commissioner Met.
I'll press the thing this time to a second.
Very good. Further discussion? Sorry, Commissioner Wang.
Okay, what about the Park Place turnaround? Do we want to put that in here?
I'm gonna,
Wait, I can.
go ahead, go back on. Okay, Commissioner Paul.
I am purposely keeping that off. I think it complicates the matter. Of the vibe I'm getting from the city is that it would be a big headache to try to put in. I feel good with the fact that we're making the change to the park landscape buffer side, and that the additional parking, while maybe nice, is too complicated to try to fit in at this time. So that's why I'm keeping it off.
Okay.
To me, it's a cleaner passing at this point.
Okay. I have another question for Don then. In this 0.85 acres at the park, if Parks Department decide that they want to build a parking space, can they encroach into that 0.85 acres?
Yes, the park folks can design their park however they seem fit, and if they feel that based on feedback from the neighborhood that there needs to be additional parking, they could build that on their property. Yes.
Okay, so the community can request additional parking inside that 0.85 acres when they're planning for the park.
Correct. So my understanding of how the Parks and Open Space folks work is that when they get ready to start programming to put together an estimate to go into the capital improvement plan for the city, they will work with the community on trying to determine how that park is going to be programmed, what amenities are going to be provided. The parking could be a part of the amenity package that gets constructed. It would just use up the money that they have for parking versus landscaping or another place set or whatever the amenities were that because obviously our budgets for a park are not infinite, right? They will set it at a certain amount, and then they'll try to plug and play and get as much as the neighborhood wants in that park with the money that they're allotted. And so they could use it for parking.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to add my 2 cents, which is that I find this is a good design. I think it's a fairly well thought out, fairly well compromised with the city. I'm sorry, with concerned residents and neighbors. Not perfect, but good. I think I find that it meets the general land use approvals under 1502.055. I also find that with respect to the administrative modifications, that the lot width, as part of a creative design, it's arguably the least deviation from the standard to afford relief. That's a weird one because it's somewhat self-imposed, the relief that's being requested based upon the number of lots that the developer would like to get. With respect to the transparency, and the garages, I think that that's a fine compromise and a unique design. I wanted to confirm one thing, though, Mr. Young or Alex. With respect to the second floor, I thought I read or understood somewhere that you've increased the transparency, a little bit more glazing on the second floor.
Alex, that's you, not me.
Yes, well above code.
On the second floor,
Yes.
in the back, facing these, on top of these garages.
Yes.
Thank you. And the setback requirements and then the landscape buffer, further modification proposed by Mr. Young is appreciated. So that's where I sit. I will recognize Commissioner Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the Vice Chair for the motion. I support that. I will vote for it. I'm still hung up on Park Place a little bit. I would really encourage you, Mr. Young, even though it's not a condition that's attached here, that you work with the city to see if there's a way to have that be used as parking and graded. I recognize we're not imposing that, or the motion that's on the table does not impose that condition. I still think you should work to do that if possible. I also would encourage both you and the city staff, when we're looking at Park Place in the future, and I recognize you can't commit to this tonight, nor am I asking you to, that at least in places, if you could move the pedestrian access into the park or into an area so that even if you can't have parking on the entire right-of-way, that there are areas that you can to help alleviate this concern in the permanent state too. And I know I'm just thinking this in my head. I am not an architect. I'm not an engineer. I don't know if it's possible, but I would really encourage you guys to look at that when you're doing that, when you get to that point down the road. So, thank you.
Very good.
Interesting. Vice Chair Poland.
Okay, I would like to modify my motion. Instead of PZR 2025-14B, what I would like to propose is PZR 2025-14A with a change to section 3.4 and have it be the text that was included as the condition. So it'll be a 14.5-foot landscape buffer for lots 1 through 6 of Block 2, along with the stipulations of what he can put into that area. And
Good enough. I think we,
I
need to, yeah.
Yeah,
I think I
is
need-
there-
So I need a resecond?
yes, I need to get your approval.
Commissioner Arment.
Second, I approve.
Jeremy, do I have to take the first one off, or is it off? Do you have to vote it down?
Since it was Vice Chair's Poland's motion, he can amend it by himself, and it's been seconded. So it's been amended.
Appreciate it. All right, further discussion. I'm sorry, Commissioner Lang.
I do think it's been a well thought out plan. I like the compromises that have been made. However, I wasn't on this board when the concept plan was put together. I still don't believe it fits in with the neighborhood. I mean, I don't live too far from here, and it just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what the perfect number is, but I feel like 61 is a lot, even with these, checking with these administrative exceptions or whatnot. So I think I'm in the minority, but I don't think I can support this motion.
Fair enough. Others? All right, I'm going to call for a vote.
Commissioner Lang?
Nay.
Commissioner Wang?
Aye.
Vice Chair Poland?
Yes.
Chair Height?
Aye.
Commissioner Arment?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Chair, that passes 6-1 with Commissioner Lang dissenting.
Thank you, guys.
all
Thank you
very much. I have to now read into the record that this meeting on December 10th, 2025, agenda item 7A, the 1313 Spruce or Bond Farm preliminary plat and administrative modification matter has been approved. It's now subject to appeal. This item now enters a 7-day appeal period. During this time period, any aggrieved party may appeal the commissioner's decision by submitting a written appeal letter stating why the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision should be amended or reversed by City Council. All appeals must be in writing, and they must be received by the city clerk's office and the planning office, it's 2 different offices, within this 7-day time period. The appeal period begins tomorrow, Thursday, December 11th at 8 a.m. It ends Wednesday, December 17th at 5 p.m. Thank you all very much. Appreciate the community coming out and support. Appreciate the work of the developer. Especially appreciate the work of staff. Thanks.
Chairman, somebody left a pair of glasses here at the podium, so if they're yours, please come up and grab them.
You're the 4th person to note. Glasses? Could have been the first gentleman, yeah. Yeah, that would have been David Palmer. All right, moving forward, agenda item 8 is final public invited to be heard, again on matters not associated with today's agenda item 7. Public's invited to come up and speak to us about anything on your mind. As people mill around and aren't listening, I don't know that there's any other members of the public that care to speak. Seeing none, I'm going to close that. Item number 9, items from the commission. I actually have one to share. I don't know if anybody else has one. I'll defer first to Chair 7 is Commissioner Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple comments, and I'll be brief.
Sorry, just you want to hit your gavel to let people know they shouldn't be talking.
Good, folks, if we could be quiet in the audience, it'd be helpful to us. So we're continuing our meeting. Josh. Go ahead, Ms. Earl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really just want to echo, I think, some of the comments some other commissioners have made. I'm really grateful we had so much engagement from the public on this. This has definitely been, I've been on the commission since January. This is the most feedback we've gotten in a meeting, and I think, frankly, the most productive feedback we've gotten. And I appreciate the applicant, the city staff, being so willing to engage. I heard from several of the commenters that city staff sat down and walked through different parts with them. I haven't heard that before in the last year. I know that's something, Grant, Don, that your teams do on a regular basis, but I really think the fact that the community recognized it speaks to how much your staff worked to do that, and just want to recognize that and appreciate you all for that. Other thing I want to bring up is the comments from Mr. Dalal that were earlier about efficiency, about just the length of time, and we know that that is not entirely our processes. It is some of it's the applicant, some of it's just the way this goes. I would certainly be interested in entertaining a discussion in the future about how we can, without really compromising the approvals, the ensuring it meets the code or anything else, how we can make some of that more efficient. And I recognize that's something staff is doing already. This is not a request that, you've never thought of this idea or that you've never done it, but I do think it's worthy of a discussion at some point in a study session in the future, at least my 2 cents. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Vice Chair Poland.
Well, darn, he took my thunder. Yeah, I was going to comment. I know that there are some items for affordable housing that helps things get through the process. I'm wondering, to kind of piggyback on, can we have like a study session just to kind of understand what those are? What's in the city's toolbox to help keep costs down, especially, and not just with affordable housing, but other housing as well. If you can do a presentation on that, I'm sure we as a commission and any public watching would appreciate that to understand what's happening with the city. And also, I'd like to also echo just thanks to the developers and to the community around there and to the city staff. I've been here slightly longer than 1 year. And I want to say that this is probably the most open communication between developers and the community, and working together to come to a resolution As somebody said earlier, it's not going to make everybody happy. It probably makes hardly anybody happy, but there's something in there for everybody. And I just really appreciate that the developer and the community took the time to work through this. I'm hoping that it can be used as a template maybe in the future if there's other developments that has this kind of stuff going on. So that's all I had.
Yeah, I did not participate in the charrettes, but that were put together, I think, by Drew and Dan Sorrell. But I think that had some breakthrough impact on at least how the concept plan moved forward. Other comments on tonight's proceedings? I'm sorry. Mr. Jacobs.
Jordan. I wanted to kind of go back to my earlier comment about this idea of in keeping with the neighborhood. A consistent design is one of our criteria. I would appreciate a study session about how we might be able to approach that a little bit more objectively in the packet. I understand it's a fundamentally subjective conversation, but I understand when we're reviewing a plat and the designs are kind of thrown around there, those are examples. It's going to be a long time before siding is nailed up. Materials are used, and we're just getting a rough idea of blocking and the size of the plats and all that. And so I think that if there is any particularly controversial items that are coming through, and we need to make a call about whether or not something fits from a design perspective. And I understand that we looked at all the code today. I would love to see if there's a way we could maybe tease that apart a little bit or include a little bit of other things in the packet. As an example, I think in the design there was like one example, like it looked like a house might be in the neighborhood, but it's all in the same rendering, so I couldn't tell. It'd be great to see like, okay, here's what all the house, here's a Google Street View of several of the houses that are going along. Here are the predominant architectural styles, and here's what we're picking up. Here are the materials we're using. What I saw tonight looked like just Prospect rubber stamped, of like kind of a mixed new urbanism, kind of like we're going to use all the materials. And to me, I think that's going to make, I could certainly understand why Commissioner Lang voted, I don't understand, appearance wasn't the only consideration, but I would appreciate that. I don't know if I speak for other commissioners here.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to share, it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Saunders is either a lecturer or an associated professor with CU in the planning department there. She has asked me, I think it was the second time I've come, and juried an undergraduate development classes development proposals. It was a class of, I think it was 15 people. They divided it up into groups of 3 and came up with a redevelopment plan. This year's plan was the redevelopment of the sugar mill facility, which was pretty interesting. If she asks you to participate in doing that in the future, you will be rewarded. It's interesting to see young undergraduate kids come up with ideas and figure out how that can get launched. So that was fun or interesting. Item number 10 is, well, is there anything more from any of the commissioners? Item number 10 is items from our council representative. I understand that one has been at least identified, not yet appointed. He's been identified, and it's Council Member Popkin will likely be our council representative. Item number 11, items from the planning director.
Sorry, little side conversation there. Just a couple things. One, I think everybody received the packet already for next week. Right now, we may have one item for January, but we're also planning to bring forth kind of the proposed changes to staff's report memo for commission's input consideration in the January session as well. So depending on the complexity, I'll call it, of that item that we may have in January, we'll try to coincide those on a meeting so we can go through that if we believe we have time.
That's all on you because I will have been retired by then.
Fair.
Yep. Next week's my last. It's like 14 years-ish. Anyhow, away I go.
So the second item, just as not a response, but just some clarification. Staff is actually working on what we're terming a rapid response program overall. And so it may make sense once we actually have that a little bit further developed and get some additional input from city manager's office and city council to kind of walk through what that looks like. We could easily coincide that with housing discussion, how we handle expedited projects for that as well. So again, may not be next meeting, but hopefully maybe within the first quarter, again, depending on how that rapid response program shakes out. And then final thing, and I'll probably lean on Don here. I think I just closed it, but happy to kind of walk through just so the group as a whole has some background. I know the question came up about the annexation agreement and what was required. So Don, if you want to cover that, just so it's clear, obviously not contextually, this project already went through, but just for future knowledge.
Thanks, Grant. So the question that was asked by Commissioner Wang was related to the two existing access points coming off of Francis and off. So I thank you. Sorry. Francis to First. And the annexation agreement language in the annexation, and I will get that. I jumped to a different one, but give me just a second here. I'll read it to you. I believe that it answers your question. And it states that, and this was for the Hildebrandt property. So it says that the owner, so the Hildebrandts or the property owner at the time, upon the city's request, shall dedicate pedestrian easements acceptable to the city and the owner for the design, construction, and maintenance of proposed secondary greenway pedestrian paths across the property, which would be the Hildebrandt property, connecting Vivian Street and Francis Street with the proposed secondary greenway pedestrian path along the entire southern boundary of the property from First Avenue to Sunset. So those existing paths that are created currently, if that is the alignment that the city chooses for construction purposes, we would negotiate to get those easements in those places. But we have the ability to get easements and keep those connections, and that was the intent of the condition.
That was it.
Okay. Thank you all. Move to adjourn.
Wait, I have a question.
Oops, sorry. Commissioner Wang.
This is for Grant, I guess. Earlier this year, I guess Commissioner Earl mentioned about the possibility of looking into single-family attached and single-family zoning. Is there any updates on that, or is that still low on the priority list?
I would say we're still looking into it. I think we are hoping first quarter of 2026 to get something scheduled to bring to the commission.
Thank you.
All right. Adjourned. Thank you all. We actually did pretty darn well.
We've been on the commission 14 years.
We need to start an hour early.
Yes, absolutely.
Required notice stuff, so for sure, maybe we could follow up with a memo.
Yeah.
To them, just providing some background on that.
Yeah, maybe an email from this gentleman clarified.
Yeah, I think it'd be quick, just say, here's the sign that's posted, it didn't meet the following items, it wasn't just the color. Exactly.